Yeah, we're off. Okay.
British Commonwealth in 1967. So the UFO phenomenon appears at the same time as all of this. And the hallmark.
Oh, come on. The bat must be going on this friggin' remote. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. Should have done this before I started. Now, check
Go to
my
call
phone
it's
around.
some kind of aviation administration or something, and they put a UFO right on their logo. So that's kind of interesting. But tell us a little bit
Hey,
about.
Diane. Hi, Han. I was a bit late today. I had something to do.
Very looking forward to our conversation. People can look at on my website. There's a documentary called UFOs, Angels, and Gods, which is a biblical view into this whole phenomenon. It's free. You can watch it at thinkagainproductions.com. You can leave a donation by clicking on the donation on the bottom if you want to. The documentary is free. And if you double click on the documentary, it'll take you to the YouTube page, and there's more videos there for you to watch. And I'm doing a series on my Patreon page. Think Again Production on the Book of Revelation, which is really popular. It's one chapter at a time every week.
Wow, that sounds awesome. And to help us fill out tonight, we have Doug Woodward. So 2 Dougs here, which is great. Yeah, so everybody go to thinkagainproductions.com and you can get that free documentary, which would be pretty awesome. Okay, well, so the big elephant in the room, UFOs. I mean, hello, right? Now, you know, probably during somewhere between the 60s and the 2004, somewhere in there, it was quite taboo to really talk about UFOs. Back in the 50s, it was not so taboo, right? The government was talking about it much more openly. And then somewhere after Blue Book, or Operation Blue Book,
Guys, if you see Mike from around the world go live on Begley's, give me a yell, guys, and I'll switch straight to him.
The government decided, we're not going to talk about that, and if you're talking about it, you're a bit cuckoo, right? But now it seems that, you know, we had the Tic Tac in 2004 with the Navy.
Oh, I'm glad it's worked out for him.
Whatever that office was
cat.
in 2017, right?
Hey, Trey, it's good to see you.
To talk about this, President Obama came out and said, there's something out there. We don't know what it is. It's definitely not human. And, you know, there are other such declarations to that extent. So, yeah, kind of give us the rundown here as to, like, from your perspective, what is going on? Is there a grand scheme that somebody's trying to, you know, pull the wool over our eyes, or what's your take on this?
I think so. Like you said, between 1948 and 1968, you know, people talked about it all the time because everyone was seeing this. And then all of the research was given to Professor Condon from Colorado University. And in 1971, he said it's all just, you know, swamp gas. It's all fake. And that kind of became the official perspective. But now we're seeing, so the culture was now under a new paradigm in which, you know, you're a kooky. You talked about it, even though independent research continued, and people all around the world continue to see it. But there's a reemergence of this, and yes, there is an agenda. And the way that I was introduced into all of this it was kind of a twofold punch. You know, there was I was attending a Bible study, and the person running it, suggests that perhaps there is a connection between this whole phenomenon and things that we may see in the Bible, like the chariots of Elijah, etc. And I thought that's interesting. It was in the back of my mind. I was researching it, and then in 1999, I had this compulsion, like this repeated thought, that I should go to visit my father, who lived at that time in Tehran, in Iran. He was alive, and tell him, there's a prophecy in the scroll of Ezekiel in which apparently there's going to be a coalition of nations entering into war with Israel, and this war has never occurred in the ancient history of Israel. And so Persia is mentioned as one of the countries in the Islamic Republic that came to power in 1979, is very much focused on that endeavor as one of the ideals of its revolution. And so if such a thing happens, you should, at least in your conscience, disagree with it, even though you can't do anything about it. I just wanted to go share this with him. He wasn't a believer at that time. And so I thought, this is from the Holy Spirit. I went there and shared this with him. This opened the door to a massive conversation about the whole of the Bible. Him and his wife, we began to read. Eventually, we went through the whole scripture, many things, prophecies, messianic prophecies, prophecies about history, empires. And eventually, once we started to read the Gospel of John, by chapter 22, they both asked to be baptized. And there we decided to go on a road trip to Shiraz, which is about 11 hours south of the capital. And this is kind of where he's from and his wife is from. And many other people came to faith in that trip. I was surprised. There was like rooms of people coming to hear the word of God. It was amazing. I mean, I was suddenly talking and preaching sometimes 8 hours a day. The thirst, and I was only there for 2 weeks. It was a completely unexpected trip. God had plans, but on the way to this Shiraz, to this town, we left after midnight. We left the capital after midnight because the roads are not very. People don't follow the rules of driving, so it's there's a lot of death. People die in car accidents in Iran. It's one of the highest rates of death in car accidents in the world. So we're driving late at night, so there's no traffic. And once we're past the capital, and we're now driving to a city called Isfahan, which is between Tehran and Shiraz, where we're going to sleep and then continue. It's a city of about 2.5 to 3 million people. It's one of the more important cities. And on this leg of the journey, you don't see, there are no lights. It's like an Arizona type desert. There's the odd car that goes by. And there's some villages where you can do pit stops. But we really had the road to ourselves in the night sky. And I'm sitting in the passenger seat with my back to the door like this, talking to my dad, who's sitting in the middle of the back seat, and his wife, who's driving. And at this point, we're like talking about the contents of scripture virtually nonstop, because their heart and mind is open. They're very thirsty. And again, time is limited. I'm just pouring as much information as I can, as they can take and are willing to take. And suddenly she points out the window behind me, and she makes these noises. She starts going, and I don't pay too much attention. I'm so caught up in what I'm saying. But my dad looks at her and says, "What's wrong, Nima?" And she continues to do that. So he looks in the same direction, and next thing you know, he's doing it as well. And they're both going. And I'm like, "What's wrong with you guys?" Now it kind of catches my attention. So I sit properly in my seat and to look to see what they're pointing to. And just a few hundred feet forward, there's this gigantic, large spherical object. It has stages I can see in I don't know. It I think has windows or something. It's hard to I don't know what it is. Right? I've never been inside one of these things. So it's kind of slowly coming down, and it has it's has a pulsating green light. It's pulsating green, and I can see the multitude of green lights all around it. That's how close we are. And I see that that's where the pulsating green light's coming from. And it's slowly coming down, and eventually it's perpendicular to the car. And looking out, I'm pretty sure that what I saw was that out of the ground, a giant silo, like a tube, came out of the ground, and it was black, like the desert night. If you were not this close to it, you couldn't see this thing come out of the ground. And this thing came right on top of it and went into the ground. And then my dad's wife cried out and said, "This is a sign from God to tell us that all that Ali is saying is true." And then she's like, "Did you see that?" And he's like, I did. And then I just kind of sank in a complete state of, you know, not confusion, but shock in my seat. You know, this was, what just happened type of an event. And so then we went to Isfahan, and we didn't talk much about it. And I thought about, when we were sitting at the breakfast table, I thought, are we going to talk about this? But no, we went to Shiraz. The journey continued. There was a lot of preaching, baptizing, and incredible. People received dreams and visions in the Islamic world directly from the Lord Himself. And I witnessed one of those with a devout woman, meaning devout to Shia Islam, who was coming to the Bible studies, and it was fascinating. It was a wonderful trip. And so when I came back, all that was, not nice, but for me, I needed to look into this one thing. So, I looked it up, and there's tons of people around the world that were seeing this, and there's websites that, allow you to explain what you saw where, and I just kind of have to share with somebody, so I explained what I had seen, and that's when I took the deep dive into the biblical perspective.
Question.
Yes.
What time frame was this? I missed that. I'm sorry.
It was the Christmas of 1999. I had 2 weeks off.
Okay.
And I decided to go see my dad and his wife to tell them about the prophecy of the Gog and Magog war in the spirit of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And then that opened the door suddenly, that conversation opened the door to a broader conversation about the Bible and about the Messiah. And then we took a road trip to Shiraz after we got baptized.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually visit the family, I think, and maybe even share all this joy. And then on the road there, on the first leg of the journey, the road to Isfahan, this is what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So,
Well, that's tremendous. Everything about that story is tremendous, including the visions and the preaching. And what an opportunity. I have to admit, I haven't had that opportunity, but then I haven't been in Iran or some other hot zone, basically.
Yeah, I had no idea what the Lord had in mind. I mean, I'm glad I obeyed this pulse, this recurring thought that was coming into my mind. Eventually, I thought I'm really scared.
So, Ali, what is your interpretation of what you saw? I mean, what was that thing in the sky?
So basically, I did then consult the Word of God, and yes, I did start to focus on these passages. So the word in Hebrew is rechev, which has the 3 root words RKV. It's been translated as chariot, like the chariot of Elijah, chariots of fire, rechevesh, or the chariots of Elijah, and the chariots of his disciple Elisha, who says, look, they open the eyes. He prays that the eyes of his student be opened to see that when they're kind of being chased by the king of Assyria, that those who are with them are greater than their enemies. This whole concept, actually, rechev means something to ride, something that you ride. So it's actually, it can be translated as a vehicle. The reason it's translated as chariots is because until the modern age, there was no other vehicle, so it was redundant to the translator's mind. And the other word, like in Isaiah 66 verse 15, that word, very holy word, and of course everything in the Word of God is holy, But it says, "For behold, Adonai will come in fire, and his chariots like the whirlwind to render his anger with fury." It's a apocalyptic passage concerning what we would call the second coming,
Wow.
the great and terrible day of the Lord. And here the word is Merkava, which has the same connotations. It's more like a carriage, something that carries the Lord, like a throne of God. It's depicted in the temple architecture, and perhaps that is what Ezekiel saw. He saw this Merkava of Adonai by the river Chabar, and which was So I started to see that my opinion of the angelic world. I realized that the universe is a mystery, and that the whole concept of the Shamayim, which is the biblical concept of the universe, divides into three. There's the sky where the birds fly. There's the area where the sun, moon, and stars exist. That's still the Shamayim, and then of course the temple at the heart of time and space, where the Lord resides. All of this is called the heavens, and that's why it's translated into plural in English, because there's actually three heavens. And the whole idea that I think it's kind of ties into replacement theology, that there was this Greek influence that shifted our attention from the universe into this ghostly realm and this place of spirits. And we kind of started to forget about the universe and about the biblical concept of Shamayim, which includes the sky, it includes the universe, it includes the abode of God. The Shamayim HaShamayim, the heavens of heavens. So when the lens of my mind started to shift away, the Bible actually does talk about the universe. And this led to the study of the sons of God and the Nephilim, and also to the concept of the gods of the nations. It was an incredible series of revelations that came, that you can see in the documentary. I realized that the nature of the angelic world perhaps is different than the way it had kind of been transmitted to me. I hadn't really seriously studied angels, but the impression I had of angels was different. So when I started to follow the idea of the sons of God and looked into the book of Enoch and realized that these beings were passing down the foundational knowledge of civilization and corrupting the kind of knowledge that God was already perhaps allowing Adam and his family to have early on before the flood. So if we had the knowledge of architecture, they would teach us to build temples to themselves. If there was a knowledge of metallurgy, they would teach to make idols to themselves. If there was the knowledge of music, they would teach that it should be used as a worship to them. And so the idea that they're transmitting astronomy and science, pharmakeia, and the whole idea that, wait, the angels exist in the creation with us, like we do. They are depicted as physical beings, like the one who sat on the tomb of the Lord. Like there's a reason why it says that he sat on the tomb of it. It's pointing to his physical nature. And the people of Sodom wanted to have sexual relations with angels. We are told that we should be hospitable because we could entertain one unawares. And then the Lord, when he came back to life, he made a point of his physical resurrection by pointing to his wounds and asking to be fed.
Hi, Talia. Good to see you.
Gospel of Luke. And so my whole concept, of this Greek spiritualized view of things started to collapse. And I realized, okay, so the Lord is not done with the creation as we know it, because I believe he's going to rule here for 1,000 years. And that these beings, when they travel between the realms, between the heavens, it seems that yes, there is these things involved. Now, I don't want to turn it into science fiction, because that would be, I think, small-minded. It'd be like me projecting, 20th century ideas into a deep mystery. But then I don't want to dismiss it as nothing, and as it's like this ghostly thing, because then that would be ignoring the testimony of Scripture and the evidence that we see. So then, once I realized, okay, so this is the angelic, this has to do with the angelic. That was the kind of the starting point. So then, what does the Scripture say about the angelic? And so I realized that, the Lord unveiled the concept of God of the nations. Basically, God had given the nations to the hands of the sons of God. This is a long story, but the Lord took me into a revelation concerning Deuteronomy 32, verse 8 and 9, which you had to read it in the Dead Sea Scroll version and in the Septuagint. But it did say that God had given the nations into the hands of the sons of God and taken Jacob as his own inheritance. And so I realized that these beings had been always here. For instance, in the book of Daniel, you see the story of the two principalities, the principality of Persia fighting an angel that comes to bring a message of scriptural importance to the prophet Daniel. And thinking about what I saw in Persia, I thought, wow, how long have these guys been there? Because even the book of Daniel, speaks about these principalities 2,500 years ago. So the whole idea that the gods, the polytheistic tradition behind the nations, and again, when you read it in the writings of the ancients, whether it's the Mesopotamian, the Sumerian tablets, the Egyptian writings, hieroglyphs, Indians, in the Hindu, the Sanskrit, the Vedic texts are very explicit. There was a lot of these vimanas, they call it in Hindi, chariots or vehicles. So the nations spoke about these beings, and they had disguised themselves as objects of worship, because this is what is in the heart of Satan. It says that in Isaiah, was it 14, the 5 eye wheels of Satan. And so the whole concept of idol worship, Paul explains, is the worship of the creation or the creator. And that these beings, these fallen angels in Christian tradition, they're called, actually had this stuff, whatever this thing is, whatever these vehicles are, and they were involved in the birth of the nations and the civilizations. They gave the codes, the matrix of civilization. The latest one, of course, is Islam, where suddenly a download occurs and then out of it comes a worldview. In the same way that Moses, of course, went up and received the Torah, and that began the tradition of God speaking, the God of gods, the Elohim Ha-Elohim, the El Ha-Elohim, El Ha-Elohim, Adon Ha-Adon, the Lord of lords, the God of gods, the God of Israel. So God spoke through Moses and the prophets, and he then entered the line of Judah, the line of David, and walked among us, and then sent his Holy Spirit, which then delivered us from polytheism and from the worship of these beings. So there is an attempt for them to reinvent themselves as modern day aliens, modern day gods, if you will. And why now? Well, when did the UFO phenomenon begin? Since you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, in 1947. And what was 1947? 1947 was the year that the United Nations declared Israel as a nation. And actually right here in this prophecy of Isaiah, it says, who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Can a land be born in one day? Can a nation be brought forth at once? For as soon as Zion was in labor, she gave birth to her children. And so I think that I'm of the school of thought that believes there's a prophetic sign and importance to this great aliyah, this great regathering and the birth of this national presence of the Jewish people in Israel, in the Holy Land, in the Covenant Land, and of course Jerusalem becoming part of the Jewish Commonwealth in 1967. So the UFO phenomenon appears at the same time as all of this. And the hallmark of it is the creation of alien hybrids. I mean, that sounds insane, but if you do a study of hybrids in the Bible, going back to the Nephilim, into all of the titans and demigods, and of course, when I was researching these things, this wasn't as popular as it is now. So I can see that God has favored this knowledge to be known, and the Lord said it would be like the days of Noah. So the mark of these beings is that this is the continuation of the fallen angelic presence, and this is perhaps their last stand. And the deception that you pointed to, yeah, I think that's...
No, I'm not singing I haven't had a beer. I only sing when I have a beer.
Definitely to reinvent themselves as modern day aliens. And then the Lord and his angels, I think, also use these things. That's why the angel that comes can fight with the principality of Persia for 21 days, and Michael has to come because they're kind of like their strengths are matched in some ways. This is of the world of angels, and so not to say that the strength of God. I mean, we are just dust.
Yeah, I just checked on him. He's
This
doing
is
his
the
stuff.
angelic world. And even so I think that this has to do with the second coming. This is where all of this is going, and we can talk more about it. But I don't want to just speak. So please.
I would agree. And have you, as part of your research, and we've talked about this on our show before about the predictive programming of like the Marvel movies, where it's sort of like a complete role reversal in which these transhuman superpower humans and otherworldly beings are fighting the evil god Thanos, who is going to come and try to conquer the world, and you see it everywhere in movies. And have you ever studied more like, I guess, the pop culture of this and how they're trying to, I guess, prepare the way or pave the way for this to be accepted?
Yes. I noticed, I put a poster of this in the documentary. I do mention that this is something that happens, but it started with 1951 with a movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still. So the UFO phenomenon starts in 1947, and it has very occult origins, going back to experiments done in California that were around opening gates.
Jack Parsons.
Exactly, Jack Parsons.
Yeah.
And the whole thing has this occult origin, and when it begins, even the sighting that the first one, Kenneth Arnold's, is over the Cascade Mountains, where there's Mount Shasta. So that's very interesting. Even
He's out of the dollar. It used to be $49 with Paul. Now he's $50.
I'm writing a novel right now. I'm doing research for it. Even Sputnik, which was the first object in space, I was looking at the date where the Russians send that satellite into space, and then the Holy Spirit compelled me to look it up in the Hebrew calendar, and it falls on the Day of Atonement, which is also a day of judgment, the redemption of Israel and the judgment of the nation. So it's both, and so I think this is kind of humanity's attempt on the influence of the fallen angels, with all the technology that came from the Hitler and the Nazi movement, to begin to prepare us for the Battle of Armageddon. And to your point, Hollywood chimes in. So in 1947, when we knew nothing about this, nothing, there was already an advisory board, a scientific advisory board that was advising the government of the United States that these are friendly beings come to help us enter peacefully, go past our, because the atomic bombs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki had been detonated. This is what drew them here, and they cannot accept us in the galactic community without us giving up, our violent and primitive ways. And then in 1951, there's a movie that comes out, The Day the Earth Stood Still, from Hollywood, which the entire movie is about this moral lesson. These aliens come and they try to investigate him and whatever, but at the very last scene, he just lifts his finger, and there's a 1 minute of all technology on the earth ceases for 1 minute, in which he then delivers a message, which is exactly this one. And this starts to catch steam that the saviors of the world have come. And as you follow the research, you start to see that we are told that they're here also to save us from environmental disasters.
Climate change.
Yeah, climate change. When I came across that, I went and interviewed Dr. David Jacobs in Philadelphia, Temple University, one of the most renowned UFO researchers, for the documentary. You can see it in the second half. And he told me, that this is what happens. They tell him that there's going to be environmental disasters, and we are here to help you guys to it. And because this was, just like the year 2000, 2001, I kept an eye to see if this whole environmental thing was going to catch steam. And guess what? In the last 20 years, it became the #1 political issue of the entire world. There's another researcher from Harvard, head of psychiatry, Johnny Mack. He goes, I think it's Zimbabwe, where this private school students, their kids, they have these beings appear to them in the courtyard. They freak out. They come running into their teachers, and he goes to investigate it. And one of the girls, she says that he told her, as she looked into his black eyes, the thought came to her mind that she should work at saving the environment. And he says to her, "Did you ever have that thought before?" And she says, "No, it came from him." So they're setting us up with issues that they're going to try to present themselves as the savior. And when you look at the counterfeit Messiah, the Antichrist, it says that he does lying signs and wonders and makes fire come from the sky, something that the prophets of Baal could not do. Mm-hmm. And so it took it was a delayed reaction. They finally got to it. They're like, give us 3,000 years. And so this is, I think, is going to have this connection behind it.
Yeah.
And in the Islamic world, they will see them as angels, and the secular world will see them as this propaganda, as you're saying, through Hollywood, is preparing people for the saviors of the world that have arrived. And because I'm a researcher, people confide in me. They don't know my perspective as biblical. They just go, UFOs, and they start opening their hearts and minds. And I'm always astonished at how, people who have very high ranks in our society, that you would never think, not only do they believe in their existence, but they've given their hearts to them, that truly they've bought the idea that the saviors of the world have arrived. And so this is the whole concept of the counterfeit savior. Mm-hmm. And they're preparing the world to present themselves.
Dally, and not by Paul Begley, I hope.
As the saviors of mankind and their chosen one. Even some will say, like we suggested in the documentary, Dr. Chuck Mister, who I interviewed, opened up the statue, the dream of King Nebuchadnezzar, and there's this idea of the commingling of seeds as part of the final empire, which leads to the 10 kings, the 10 toes. And that he suggested that it's the Hebrew plural pronoun they shall mingle their seeds and see the man. And since instead of like the days of Noah, these final rulers of the earth could be Nephilim, or from this ancient bloodline, which is not something that would be new. We've had many Nephilim kings. Gilgamesh, of course, is a very famous one. There's Og mentioned in the Word of God, the king of Sion and the king of Bashan. We have, of course, Goliath and his brothers. The Nephilim have had rank among us and have ruled nations. And so the idea that there could be a re-emergence of such a thing, of course, the days before the flood, they had an entire empire, civilization here. So this is kind of going to happen again. And these guys are presenting themselves as saviors of mankind. But this is the interesting part. I think when the Lord and his angels return, they do come back, like it says in Isaiah 6:15, with the chariots. And like it says in the book of Psalms, I believe it's Psalm 67, verse 8, or it's 68, verse 7, one of those two. It says the chariots of God are thousands upon thousands, and they are.
It's chapter 68, verse 17. So
17, very good. 68, verse 17, and the word there again is rechev. So it points to the angels. It seems that the angels use rechev, and the Lord uses the merkava. But I think that it becomes possible for the enemy.
Chariots of God. I never knew that was in the Bible. That's heavy.
To seize on this and present the second coming as an alien invasion.
I totally agree. I just want to let you know, I totally agree with everything you're saying. This has been the extent of my work in Corrupting the Image, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and so we're totally tracking on what you're saying here. Merkava and Rekev are the same exact root, so there's very little difference between them.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think this has to be put in a way that the modern man can accept it, because gods and aliens and demons, that's all old stuff, but
Exactly.
if you put it in a veneer of these are ascended masters or these are ancient alien beings who have evolved over millions of years, well, that we can handle, right?
Panspermia theory. The aliens created us, like the Ben Stein movie when he interviewed Dawkins, and so Stein is like, so you can believe in intelligent design if it's done by a higher species, but you can't believe in a creator God. And Dawkins is like, yeah. And again, that's a kicking the can down the road. Where did they get created from? Did it even start this process?
Exactly. In this whole idea of the reinventing, this is just a theory, but it's possible when you look at like Galileo and Newton and these guys, they were also Masons, and Masons memorized rituals and sometimes even verses from scripture, but it gets an interpretation that's different. I wonder if the strategy is a several centuries plan. So basically, they first start to say, let's put aside the biblical view of the universe. We're no longer in the heavens and the earth. This is no longer the host of the heavens and we the host of the earth. We are in the universe. And we're like, okay, well, what is the universe? And Galileo is looking through his telescope, and they begin to tell us, well, it's a rocks and gases and dwarfs. They create their own terminology, and we keep perfecting the telescope. And so then we see, wow, our understanding of reality changes. We're no longer in the biblical heavens and on the earth. We are now in the secular universe. So our worldview first has to change. They first change the setting of reality in our minds. Then they begin to populate it with concepts. There's atheists, the Age of Enlightenment, and Darwinism, which becomes the creation story of the atheists. So we evolved here, and we can now think that others evolved elsewhere, and now we get the concept of alien, because our concept of reality has been altered. Our worldview has been altered from the biblical perspective of where we are to this human perspective, defined by a series of European scientists and astronomers, and of course have nothing against science or looking
like actual science that you can test, observe, and repeat, as opposed to this fantasy world of evolutionary science, which
ideology, exactly.
By definition is not science, because we can't test it, observe it, and repeat it.
You got it. It's just ideology in the name of science. So I think there might have been several centuries in the making type of strategy, because the angels, they have long lives. I don't know how long they live. I don't know, in mortals, they live eons. I don't know, of course, but I can see that they don't live 120 years. So they think ahead. They could have been planning this from the Renaissance. Some say that what we're seeing today would be with the sign of the regathering of the Jewish people and the birth of Israel, started with a teshuvah, a repentance movement among the Hasidic. So perhaps that was the sign that they got that. They're like, okay, let's prepare. We're headed there, because we can see that Satan quotes scriptures of the Lord. So to the measure of possible, they look into this to thwart the plan of God forbidding. That's what the Holocaust and the 1,000-year Iraq was all about. So it's been a process of creating worldview and presenting themselves in the context of the worldview that they've created for the general culture, by separating it from the Word of God and pushing. The reaction has been to think of the heavens as a spiritual place. divorced completely from the universe. And the
Let me interrupt and ask a follow-up question or two.
Go for it.
Yeah, David Jacobs, you mentioned David Jacobs. One of the more controversial subjects certainly is abduction. And of course, he takes a very, very specific line in terms of basically saying that there are hybrids. They live among us, and that their intention is evil. It's very much like, I don't know if you're familiar with the X-Files and the whole story arc of the X-Files and the black oil and all that, but it's almost exactly like that. And so I'm wondering if you have formed an opinion regarding his theories and kind of those questions of, are they living among us? Is the alien abduction phenomenon real, and so forth?
Oh yeah, I mean, his research is very thorough. When I read his book, I was very impressed. I thought it was just going to be, funny. I read his book because Chuck Missler wrote a book called Alien Encounters, and I already was familiar with everything that he had in his book. But the one line in the book he said that there's some scholars are interested in the alien abduction phenomenon because it may relate to the reemergence of the Nephilim, and I thought I got to look into that. So when I got David Jacobs' book, basically him, John Mack from Harvard, the head of psychiatry at Harvard, and Bud Hopkins were three main researchers of what J. Allen Hynek, who classified the UFO phenomenon as a Project Blueprint, that he had difficulty going into this fourth, close encounters of the fourth kind, which was alien abduction. And so Bud Hopkins started to look into that, and he's a very talented artist who's passed away now. He coined the word hybrids in 1983, and then he introduced the concept to Dr. David Jacobs from Temple University, and then John Mack was the head of psychiatry at Harvard, and he decided he was going to look.
Yeah, it usually comes on around the same time though, Talia, within like a 10 or 15 minute period. I think Paul yaps for about 45 minutes. He plugs his stuff, and then Mike comes on. That's how it usually works.
The whole thing and dismiss this theory of abductions and the creation of hybrids and all this as a modern day psychiatric.
We should fix the audio. All their audio levels are in different volumes.
Or he shocked the academic world by publishing a book called Abduction, in which he said it's all real, that the people had no reason to lie. They were people who were there's police officers, judges, lawyers, professors, engineers, housewives. I mean, it happens to everybody and anybody, people with great responsibility. They had no reason to suddenly lie about this one thing in their lives. And they spoke about it the way that a person speaks when they tell the truth. I mean, he was head of psychiatry at Harvard University. So he became himself a researcher of abduction. Dr. David Jacobs' research is very empirically based. He collected, last time I met him, he had 1,200 accounts. And so he sees a consistency, he just listens to accounts and realizes everyone is saying the same exact thing. And people, at first, there were no books written about all this stuff, so no one was watching documentaries with videos when they were first coming to see him. And they all said the same thing. So he started to see a pattern. The abductions happen from childhood to old age. And you gotta watch the documentary. He explains it all. And
yeah, Diane, and he reckons he's only worth $300,000. That's got to be wrong. He'd make that in like 2 or 3 months, I reckon, the way he plugs his stuff. But that they reckon that's his net worth, 300 grand. He posted a link last week.
Gave me drawings that he's made, and I even have drawings from children who are abducted, kids drawing in the documentary. And so I realized there was a lot of evidence for this from credible sources and accounts, and therefore this was real. And this put a lot of flesh and bones in my mind
Leave the door open so long.
to the story of ancient hybrids mentioned by all the civilizations, whether it's the Titans or the demigods, and of course the biblical Nephilim. And so I realized, wow, so they really had, this is literal. The fallen angels and the daughters of Adam, they did have children, and these children were the Nephilim, which translated into giant.
Ollie, have you ever done any deep dive research into Skinwalker Ranch and some of the phenomenon there?
No, but that's something that people ask me about. So I should look.
I mean, I asked you about it because there's a television show about it, and I watched an episode or two, and it was pretty fascinating. I don't know if it's true or not, but there sure are a lot of odd reports. Like maybe it's one of these portals or something, if you will.
Right.
Sort of like what I think they might be trying to mess around with over there at CERN, and obviously you've got Mount Hermon, where I think is one of these places, and I don't know if you want to call them portals to another dimension, or
Yeah, that'd make more sense, Talia. 4 to 5 million.
or there's something is going on there. So
Yeah. I have an open mind. I mean, I don't know the nature of reality. I mean, I don't even know how my car operates. But if you want my testimony to Douglas Woodward's question, so I think that his research, I like the fact that Dr. Jacob doesn't put a New Age slant or any slant, even a religious slant. I appreciate the empirical, evidence that he.
these are the facts.
These are the facts.
Well, but he does draw the conclusion, though, that these are. I believe he draws the conclusion that these are extraterrestrials, that they are abducting human beings, and that their overall intent is destructive towards human beings. And it almost sounds as if there is some kind of a comprehensive plan. Again, the X-Files analogy.
Question for you and Dr. Hamp here. Do you think what do you think? Is it something? Because again, Satan is not omnipotent, not omniscient. But do you think maybe some of these abductions are these experiments on people to generate this upcoming transhuman hybrid where you take the mark and Ollie, you've never been on here, you might never listen, but I believe that the mark is the oldest lie in the book. It will transform a human into, we can be like gods. The oldest lie in the word. You can become like God. You can live forever. You can become immortal. And Jared Kushner recently was talking about how either him or his children's generation would be the first ones to live forever.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, we'll see what the mark is. I mean, it does have this feeling that you get connected to the counterfeit Messiah.
Star Trek.
So
Borg.
Yeah, in the Borg, exactly. I feel it's got always the enemy's trying to create a counterfeit version of God. So the dragon, is posing as the father, the Antichrist of the son, and this mark is a connecting mechanism into it. Maybe artificial intelligence is part of it, but these are just theories because we'll see when we get to it. You're right that he takes a secular perspective because he doesn't believe, even though he's Jewish by bloodline, he doesn't believe in the biblical account of all of these things. I mean, he asked me not to, share his. That was 22 years ago, and I've met him now again for a new documentary because he said the hybrids are living among us. That was his latest book. So I was giving a talk, and after the talk, this woman comes up to me and she says, why do you speak negatively about these hybrids? I was born into this whole world. Now, when I was born, there was like these, ships, these UFOs in the hospital. Outside of the hospital, their lights glaring. And she said, I live in this subdivision around here where I was giving the talk. And she said that there's many of them living in that subdivision, and they know me, and they say hello to me. While she was speaking, this very tall man came, could have been a basketball player, and he folded like an elastic, said something. She was short. She was like short, and he said something into her ears, and then she said, I'll be right there. And then he didn't look at me, he left. And I just started talking about these guys living in the subdivision where she lived. And at first I thought, I don't know what to think of this one, but the more she spoke, the more I realized she was for real. And so I got interested, and I looked into her eyes to pierce her mind through my gaze and send, the energies of my own mind into hers through her eyes. just to connect deeper and see who I was talking to. And her eyes had a wall, a shield. My energy went and hit it. I've never experienced this before. I've looked into people's eyes are spiritually dead. I've looked into people's eyes are soft, but the vibrations of my mind's intention hit a wall.
Yeah, Diane, that's true. I wonder where their money goes. I bet it's not the homeless.
A literal wall. I couldn't pierce it, and she caught me, and she smiled like, I caught you. And I was like, whoa, what? Because they do look into the eyes. That's what we see from the abduction accounts. And Dr. Jacobs believes that they use it as a conduit, the nervous system, a conduit to different parts of the mind. So it's very interesting that they do live among us, and it sounds strange, but the Lord said it would be like the days of Noah. And the days of Noah were the days of the Nephilim, and they were the days of the corruption of the earth through the knowledge that was spoken into the human world that corrupted it.
Were you able to dialogue with Dr. Jacobs at all regarding our more Christian understanding?
Yeah.
And was he just like, or was he at all open to talk about it?
Yes, not at all. And he said simply to me, and I think he's a great guy, he's not a great source.
Sure.
I don't mean to speak in any way behind his back. He was a great guy. I'm just testifying to what he said since you're asking.
Right. Yeah.
He said, well, we've seen the bones in the ground, and we've seen the dinosaurs, and so he's like, the Torah, the Book of Genesis is a fairy tale.
Oh, okay. So he rejected it based on Darwinism and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
He used the circular dating method where they date the bones by the rocks and the rocks by the bones to arrive at their predetermined conclusion.
You should ask him though if he'd seen any, imprints of alien feet next to the dinosaur.
I wouldn't let him go without taking a jab. Like, the moment I went, he just shut it down. And then, he said, don't say that I don't believe in God and things like that, because people say he's a naysayer. And so I was like, don't worry about it. I'm not.
He's not a great service, as you said. I mean, his research, we would obviously interpret the data differently, but just the incredible amount of empirical data that he gathered to basically prove that there is a phenomenon here that natural explanations just don't touch. Something's going on outside of nature here.
And like you said, who in their right mind, other than crazy people, and these are just normal people who didn't want to have these experiences, like the experience you had, Ollie, where you sell this thing. I mean, I guess if God wants to show something like that to me today, I don't want him to, because then everybody's then I'm going to tell people and they're going to think I'm crazy. I don't think you're crazy, by the way.
No, I know. No, it's true. I think the Lord opened the window to show me because he wanted to anoint me to bring the biblical perspective to people. Because, recently I was thinking about this. I was thinking, what is it that I'm bringing? What am I talking about? What is it that's unfolding through this whole perspective? Dr. Hampton, others are writing about it, and everyone is gathered kind of velocity. I think that with the dispensationalist movement, like I'm tired. Sorry, I didn't sleep last night too much. There was a gentleman with Hal Lindsey, Cyrus Schofield, Hal Lindsey, Chuck Missler, all of these gentlemen. They brought back to life that God was not done with Israel, and the prophetic importance of what was happening in that land and with that people. I think that what the Lord is now bringing to light with this research is the angelic dimension. And the reason for that is because we need that to understand the second coming and the events that are ahead of us and the events that are unfolding over our world right now, because it is a war of angels. And the second coming is very much a war of angels. These guys are preparing for that. So I think this information is important. And I will use very much secular.
On this panel, you have one still full-time dispensationalist, two former dispensationalists who also 100% agree that God will keep every promise to the house of Judah and the house of Israel.
Yes, exactly.
But at five. So,
Yeah, Ollie, I have a question for you. Do you think the Revelation 12 battle between Satan and Michael, do you think when that actually plays out, it may not be like so much angels with swords in the sky, but maybe it's from our vantage point here on Earth, we're looking up and maybe we're seeing something kind of like UFO type interactions with one another?
Absolutely. I think so. I think that we have to just take that step. That this is where the evidence is leading us. The nature of the world is different.
That'd be so cool if we get to see Michael fight with Satan. And wow, I'd love to see that.
And it's more Star Warsy, I guess. Than I was once on a show of this other gentleman, L.A. Marzulli, was on Coast to Coast AM, and the host asked us this very question, and we both instantly answered yes.
Right.
That the War of Angels is going to unfold through this. So if you look at my documentary, I have footage in there that is from a Columbia shuttle. And so the Columbia shuttle had cameras on it just to capture space randomly. And I have it in 3 frames. So you first see the footage, then you see it in slow motion, and then in completely slow motion. And so what you see is that there's a light on the edge of the atmosphere. And this footage has been scrutinized to death when it came out. And then there's another light that appears, and the light that appears shoots a ray at the other one. And then the first light zooms away, and the ray just misses it. And so then I said, could it be that the reason UFOs crash, like Roswell, is because it is the evidence of this angelic war? Is that the UFO crashes? And then I showed this footage from the Columbia shuttle, which I thought was interesting. It was scrutinized to death and accepted as real. And you look at it for yourself, you can see what you see. So I think if you say God became a man and walked among us, people say that's I can believe that. And if you say he preached, by sitting on the small boats of fishermen's Galilee, or on the back of a donkey, or even he was at the end of Roman rips, people can believe that. If you place the Lord in the heavens in the midst of his angels and their chariots, and then it's like, no, that's God is too big for that. Well, no, I don't put God in any box, big or small. God can do anything that he wants. But I see that the angels like us are bound by the laws of creation. And now I think the Lord is removing the veil and showing us the true nature of the angelic world, because we need to understand it, because we need very much the generation, maybe it's our kids, I don't know, but we're in the season, and I think it's a 21st century event, in the season of the return of the Lord. And now, so we're not just like the sons of God and the sons of light and the sons of darkness from the scroll of the apocalypse in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We're not just, we superimpose Roman, armament on angels. We're not doing the same thing. We're not just imposing on the world of angels, where we are in the story of technological revolution. I think the whole entire technological revolution that is now, we're in the 4th phase apparently, we are told by the Carl Schwab, that we are now in the 4th stage of the digital, it's called digital revolution, the 4th industrial.
Guys, they're probably a placebo anyway, because I don't think they can stop radiation.
Revolution. I think this may have actually started by the enemy in order to prepare us very much for this battle of Armageddon, because we are of the world of God and angels. We are the sons of Adam, who was made in the image of God. We are of that world, and we can understand the things of that world and get ready to partake in it. So, yeah, I think this is all the makeup of what's going to lead us to second coming. It's UFO phenomenon.
What do you make of Stephen Greer and all the work that he's done?
Oh, Stephen Greer. Yeah. I met him at the something called the Expo Politic, and it was at that time, we were making documentaries, so it was like between 1999 and 2001, around that time, and it's called Expo Politics. It was the Minister of Defense of Canada under Pierre Elliott.
Hi, Gigabyte. Guys, by the time they give you radiation tablets, I'm pretty sure it's already over. It means they've let off nuclear bombs. So once that happens, there's no point taking pills.
Trudeau, the father of the current prime minister, he one day was called in and told that he needs to, the army called him in and said, look, we're seeing these stuff and you need to know about it. And he called his generals in the United States and they said, yeah, we're seeing it too. And apparently that was the whole idea of weaponizing space.
No way.
It was national
History of Halloween.
just in case war, at least, we should prepare.
Right.
And so when I went there to film this, Minister of Defense tell his testimony, Stephen Greer was there, and I met him. And
Mike's
I
on,
had
yeehaw.
seen-
Thanks, Di. Which one? There we go.
She gave her life to Jesus Christ. And now, the man, the myth, the legend, Mike from around the world. Mike, how you doing tonight?
God bless you, Pastor Paul Begging. Doing well.
Oh, praise God. You sound good tonight. Energized, are you?
Yeah, absolutely.
You might be, give me a little volume. You might be a little tired because I think that there's so much going on. I mean, I don't know
A few things.
how you're
A few
keeping.
things.
Yeah. You know, I won't share what, you sent us an email. As a matter of fact, I don't know. But there's some things that's been happening, haven't they, Mike, this week?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, big time. Big time.
Mike, did you see that flaming cloud over Russia, over St. Petersburg?
I did.
What in the world is that, Mike? What is that?
Well, it's going to be speculation behind that. But I tell you what, the fact of what it looks like is, that the world saw it is more like a message than anything else.
A sign.
Yeah, looks like a even if it's man-made, failed technology, whatever the case is, it's a very it depicts an image of an inbound something about to hit something. Is what it looks like. It's what a lot of people saw that. So it's almost like imagery. It's very strange imagery, but it resembles some type of object about to impact Earth. That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah, like a massive asteroid, maybe, or
Yeah.
maybe some type of I'm not going to say EMP. I don't know what that would look like. It would be a lot higher than that. I don't know what would fall, or could be pieces of a comet or a meteorite. I mean, is it? I mean, it's over St. Petersburg, Russia. It's almost like, is it God or is it man? Whichever, it's still a fearful sight. The Bible said there'd be great signs and fearful sights in the heavens. This thing was
right. Yeah, it was. I don't think it was man because the radar was clear. Radars, sat imagery, everything was clear. All the optic bands were clear. So I don't think it was man. I think that was some type of a stream of wind, basically. But the formation of it was quite was extraordinary. Then it maintained itself for a little while and went away. And so that was quite extraordinary. I think that was somewhat of a natural formation, but when I say natural, it is odd.
Sort of looked like a meteor to me. It sort of had a smoke trail behind it.
That's how it looks. And given the timing that this is happening in the middle of, people talking about nuclear war, prepping for nuclear war, celestial problems, as we are facing, celestial problems. So, yeah.
I mean, listen to that, Mike, and play it one more time, Brock. I mean, folks, you're saying this didn't show up on radars?
No.
So that's making you think this wasn't a military thing or a flaming out missile or some kind of weird. This could be actually a sign from God, a sign in the heavens.
That's right. It's not. I don't believe it's man-made because every.
So it looks like it's smoke trail behind it.
So nothing picked up anything. Believe me, Russia's being watched very closely. Obviously, it's being watched, and but nothing was nothing showed up in that area. So
Oh, that's cool.
Wow. Well, folks, you heard it here. My friend the world sharing with us that there was no, it was clear.
El Shaddai means my provider. That's cool.
There was no, nowhere was there any signs of anything being done by man that this was a sign. And that's why I read this. And if this is a sign, as it appears to be a sign, the Bible said there would be great signs and fearful sights in the heavens. Okay, this is what would happen right in Luke 21 when Jesus is saying, well, you're asking me what are the signs of the end of the days? Okay, I'll share with you. And he goes through this list of stuff like wars and rumors of wars and nations rising against nation and and there'll be famines and pestilences and plagues and all that. By the way, great signs and fearful sights in the heavens. And Russia is in the middle, of course, this conflict. The whole world is afraid of Armageddon. Putin even named his new general in charge of the war General Armageddon. I mean,
yeah, he's been a doozy. That guy's a doozy. He's very cold. He's very cold, very directed in what he does, and so he's not very emotional. Let's put it that way. If he ever receives a directive, he's going to carry that out or die. That's how they.
So you guys got. I'm sure you've seen his file. I mean,
yeah, he'll actually, for the sake of the ideology, this guy will utilize everybody he can utilize to complete the objective. And so, they should call him General Armageddon because he is. He does not believe in negotiating. He does not believe in politics. He's repulsed by kind, behavior. He's really results driven. And he will kill everybody to get there. That's just who he is.
So I remember when you talked about Salami, General Salami.
Yes.
You said this guy was one of the most dangerous men in the world. And
yep.
Trump took him out. And Trump did take him out. No question about that. Do you put General Armageddon in that same category or no?
Well, you have General Salami dies, right?
Right.
And then that same archetype is in this new Russian commander. The same archetype. So that's it's kind of like those folks when all those ministers got together and they said, hey, we can't have the death penalty. They were asking why. They said because every time we kill one of these murderers out here, that same murder is committed, all over the place or in a different place from people that don't even know about, this guy being incarcerated. That same murder is replicated through other folks. And so they keep them, they keep prisoners. They don't like the death penalty because they know if they kill them, that spirit's going to be released and go into somebody else. And
wow.
That was driven by priests and pastors.
So you're saying,
wow, that's interesting.
Like the demons in General Salami are just move over to the next big general somewhere. It just finds a new host and is just as bad or worse than the last one.
That's right. Same thing that happens in wartime with a lot of soldiers. They will go overseas. And of course, the enemy, once we have a case where the enemy has fallen, right, a lot of death, those spirits that the enemy carries or whoever carries them, when they die, a lot of soldiers come back with attachments, right? And that is a very real concern. And it never fails. Every time there's a battle, more and more troops come back with attachments. And America's filling up with these things. So our jail system, they don't like to kill some of the hardened criminals. They like to keep them around. Because
Okay, Talia, God bless. Good night.
Kill one of these hardened criminals, that same replicated murder is going to start happening somewhere in the U.S. Very quickly. So that happens a lot.
Wow.
And it is, at its root, it is spiritual.
It is very spiritual. And these
yes,
demons,
it is.
These demons definitely do go find another host. And now they're no longer incarcerated. They're back on the street and they're doing ungodly deeds again. And this is why that's why the weapons of our warfare, folks, are not carnal or fleshly, but they're spiritual. Okay? They're mighty. They're in the spiritual realm, and that's what we're really dealing with here. Even in warfare, even in natural warfare, it's actually spiritual warfare that's taking place. Mike, We don't have enough iodine tablets. It's not just America, but I guess all of Europe is freaking out. They're not prepared. There's a lot of talk about a nuclear strike going to happen somewhere. There's way too much discussion, Mike. Is it too much?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
What's the
they
chatter?
Understand.
Is there chatter out there in Intel?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're still nervous. They're very nervous. And Putin is in a very strange position, right? Because the entirety, the whole of the UN is against his actions, number one. He's still being political, largely, to a degree. His pipelines were destroyed. He's reestablishing one, trying to get Europe. He asked Europe, "Do you need this? Do you need this oil?" That's what he asked Europe. "Do you need this gas?" And so he's establishing another gas line because his leverage was taken away through the destruction of those two lines. So he established another. Saudi Arabia is also reacting to that. Also, Turkey is with him. So Turkey and Russia are now working together. Turkey may become a hub, a depot, if you will, of distribution for gas for Russia. And he's also talking to Saudi Arabia. Things are not looking good, but if Putin...
He's going to have to sell a lot to that to do that $1 billion debt hand.
The UN right now, they already know what they're going to do. NATO understands what they have to do. Because Putin is not going to stop. He's not going to stop until he acquires what he set out to acquire. He's just not going to stop. Now, here's the problem. You have Putin that's not going to stop. Zelensky is not going to give up anything out of pride for that nation, right? He says he wants democracy for that people. That's his saying. So he's not going to stop fighting. And due to this propaganda machine that they have for both the Ukraine and Putin, this thing is not going to stop. So NATO is delivering all of its weaponry to Ukraine. That's bad. That's very bad. Yeah. It's bad because every time that happens, Putin is going to respond with weapons of equal intensity, right? Now, if we would have let that alone, he would not have used some of the new weaponry. Now, keep in mind, Putin has...
I think you posted something yesterday, Di. The fact that Saudi Arabia stopped the 2 million barrels of gas a day, that was a sign that they joined Russia. I think you posted a link on that yesterday.
This guy has so many... They lie with this propaganda saying that he doesn't have a lot of jets. Wrong. They lie when they say he didn't have enough hypersonics. Very wrong. Right now, he could actually fire off thousands of hypersonics wherever he wanted to. He knows that that's at his disposal. He has not released any orders for his mainline military to engage with the Ukraine. So what he's been doing is using people from impoverished places and brand new trainees that may not have the best scores, right? Sending them to the Ukraine is what he's been doing. The recruitment of individuals in Russia, when he said he's mobilizing the military, right? That's so they can take up all the some of the rear echelon jobs while he sends his main force forward. But that's only for NATO. He's doing that for NATO, not for the Ukraine. He's not doing what he's doing for the Ukraine. That mobilization is for NATO. Why? Because he has a hint of what NATO is going to do. The USA, NATO, they're not the only ones with embedded spies, right? They're not the only ones with agents in foreign territories. So he must have picked up on something, and he's getting ready. Keep in mind that NATO is they're not in a good position, right? The USA is not in a good position. Europe is not in a good position. We're talking about oil. We're talking about certain minerals and supplies. Russia has all the minerals they need to continue to produce weaponry and everything else. They have it all. They can produce an obscene amount of bullets. They could probably supply the world with artillery for 4, 5, 6 lifetimes if they wanted to. Just so everybody understands the real picture here. So he's not going to back down. But NATO is not going to back down. Now that they have condemned what Putin is doing, they have put themselves in a position they cannot back down, because if they do, the political machine for the UN is going to break down. The international order will not be upheld. It will fracture and fall apart. So they are defending ideologies.
So when Putin said this is the end of the American world order, is he possibly correct?
Yeah, he really is. I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Suppose
And I watched something after the stream yesterday, and they said that the Ukrainian forces are nearly spent. There's not many left. I think you guys watch it with me. There's not many soldiers left. That's why they're recruiting ISIS and what's the other one? The Taliban?
suppose he stops.
Al Qaeda.
He just cuts off oil exports, right, and
Yep.
gas distribution in Europe. Saudi Arabia is going to respond. They already want to decrease their output by 2 million barrels per day. Now, just to give everybody a perspective of what that means, the USA consumes what? The U.S. consumes about 19.8, I believe it is, million barrels per day of oil. At 19.8. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. It's around that number. Our SPR, our Strategic Petroleum Reserve, is only 717 million barrels, right? We import 3.9 million or 4 million barrels per day. We manufacture or produce 11.7 million per day. So that means we consume, our consumption rate, right, at 19.9 is still above what we import and what we produce. So we rely on Saudi Arabia so that we can keep our nation fueled at, pretty good rates. But if they cut that off, we're going to be stuck. We're going to have 5 months of our strategic petroleum reserves to offset some of the loss of that oil, right? And that's going to be a problem. And what they have done with this international order, what that really means is an international petroleum supply. That's what that really means, right? This is a distribution system that they have set up. So everything is balanced. Gasoline prices are based on supply and demand, not how many barrels, not how much. That's why barrels of oil can go up. Gasoline prices will stay the same. That's based on supply and demand.
Right.
Everything is being upset, right? It's being upset because Russia and Saudi Arabia, if their relationship breaks all the way down, right, or gets interrupted or something like that, then OPEC Plus and OPEC, they're going to have no choice but to decrease a little more for the sake of keeping markets regulated. That's exactly what they're doing. And so this does not look good for the international order.
Now,
So
when you think about it, just 18 months ago, the former administration was here. We had a surplus of what we were producing more oil than America could use. We were actually selling oil on the open market, and the price of crude oil was way down. The price of gasoline was beautiful for the American economy. And how did we go from there to here in 18 months? Policy.
It's nervousness. These are by projections, right?
Yeah.
These are by projections. Now remember this, we're talking about the Strategic Petroleum Reserve is 717 million. That's under federal control, right? Production of oil that people know about is 11.7 million barrels per day. Right, we're gonna have a consumption rate of about 23 million barrels per day in about 9 months. So it goes up from there. There are some private folks, right? Private industry is producing oil too, so we can't just lock them out. So what we have here is people are afraid of projections. Part of the markets is what they're afraid of in the future, not actually based on facts. They always want that cushion. Right? Everybody's trying to survive. The rich want to stay rich. They're not willing to be poor. And so what they want to do is give themselves a good cushion and then set the market so that people won't absolutely just perish, because if they have no employees, their company goes under, right? They need to compete in this international order. So basically this international order is nothing more than a financial order based upon oil, based upon raw ingredients for what we consume. And that's what's falling apart, because Iran is a big part of that. We get oil from Iran, right? Imagine that. The same people that we say, we need to regulate what they're doing. We get money from them, or oil from them. We get oil from places you wouldn't believe. We do.
Venezuela?
So
do we get
oil? That's why we get oil from places you wouldn't believe. We get oil from our enemies, right?
Yeah.
And so the market is more of a ruse to control aspects of richness of these global rich individuals to keep them in tight control constraints, right?
So
But you have a few people that will always dictate that market based upon how they speak. It's not based on reality. This is based on a type of surety or future or something. So not to get into the demographics of that, what makes this so bad for the U.S.?
You wouldn't be having an energy crisis if Biden didn't shut down that oil line that Trump built. You wouldn't be having oil problems now.
Hey, it's that our bluff is being called. We can support ourselves with oil. Yes, we can do that. They're going to decrease our oil consumption by at least 10 million barrels. They're going to do this by those electric cars. That's why they're pushing for electric this and electric that, electric that. They're doing this so that we have about 200 years worth of oil. That's what they're doing it for. So we can sustain ourselves with nobody else for about 200 more years, right? It's what they're doing. The truth is, Pascal, there's an unending supply of oil, right? It would take us 60,000 years to use up that oil. So you're talking about propaganda. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
They can't override. This is a big system that they have created, very complicated set of books. This is how the world operates, by a bunch of books that people thought up and they say, well, we have to do it this way. Let's follow our own policies, no matter what happens. And so, yes, people die for no reason. People starve for no reason.
Right.
In truth, nobody has to starve. Food prices don't have to go up, all this. But what they're doing is saving this international order. I can't make that clear enough. All this stuff that people are saying is to save the international order, not to save the U.S., but to save the international order. Right, that's it. Yeah. To keep those relationships going, to keep some of these folks that just came in to that international order, to prop them up, right? Yeah. That's what it's all about. If that were cut away, the U.S. could support itself, no problem.
We could live good. We could live. I mean, America could self-sustain itself forever.
People can have right. That's why people can have free electricity, free water. I'm telling you, we could do that. But greed, right?
Right.
And here's what they're going for. This international order means everything, right? It is, because this is the framework for the beast system. It really is. They know this.
Yep.
I'll give you an example of the beast system. I give you a small ideology most people don't know about. It's just a small, tiny interjection of how this world is built right now. Of all people on the earth, a lot of people have this ideology. I hear it all the time, more and more. And they say, well, if you believe in something, you essentially create that reality. And people say that harmlessly, right? Like it's normal to folks to say that, to believe that. They don't know where that came from. They don't know that this came from the Theosophical Society. They don't know that this came from people who worshipped Lucifer. And the same people who worshipped Lucifer were the same ones who wrote the books on psychology. You're looking at folks like there were several folks involved in this. One of them was Carl Jung, right? Sigmund Freud, of course, and the Rand.
Frederick Nietzsche.
Yeah, the Rand girl. She's the one who invented objectivism, capitalism, ego, wealth, all these different things. But I'm telling you, they're inventors of the framework we now operate in. The founders did not establish those things.
David
right?
Rockefeller.
The founders based things on a moral society, and to keep that moral society so it could be operational. So to kind of defeat this one person ruling faith and government and all this other stuff.
Right.
But it was usurped. It was usurped.
In other words, it's what Geneva just said in the chat. It's all about control. It's about
gone purple.
You have to keep in control. To keep this international order in control is the only way you're going to be able to set up this beast system. And you can't let the common man get his hands on the control.
Oh, I can't change the blue.
Keep us down for the struggle, so that the elitists, the cabal that's running this world, if you will, this beast, this ugly beast, which is really what the Antichrist will be the head of, has to rise up. And I noticed that Saudi Arabia, they're telling us, go away. We don't care about what your problem is. They're telling Biden that. Like you said, Turkey and Russia are working together. But it's an international order that is based on controlling the masses. Totally
right.
in
And
control.
you know what? They're perfectly doing it.
Yeah.
They're perfectly doing it because they really need people, right, to engage. They want people to, because if you ask yourself, what's keeping a person, what keeps the average person down? Themselves. Because they look outside the world and they say, I can't do that. That's what they say. I can't do that. Jesus taught us something different, but people say, I can't do that. Right. I can't compete with them. I can't do this. So guess what? They'll never take that first step of faith.
No.
And if they don't take that first step of faith, then Jesus already said, if we take that step of faith, it's by his strength we'll walk all the way through.
Amen.
If we don't take that first step of faith, we can't receive anything.
No.
Even a person who prays, Jesus said, if that person who prays, they really don't think they're going to receive. Don't let that person think they're going to receive anything. Because they're not preparing for what they prayed for. Right. So it's the same thing. Okay. So this mechanism, Pastor Paul, is going overtime. If it takes 2 billion people to be killed on the face of the earth to establish it, they're going to do it just that way. But they need people's participation.
Yep.
People have to participate.
Speaking of that, is that Poseidon nuclear submarine, and they call it the Poseidon. This is the thing that could, this ability to create a massive nuclear radiation tsunami. Is this thing still loose there?
Yeah, it's out there.
Do we have
100 megaton nuclear warhead?
Are you saying we don't know where it's at, or do we have?
No. And people keep saying they built one. That's not true. They built two Belgorod 600-foot long submarines.
There's 2 of them.
2, and two big behemoths in the sea. Well, both of them are. They don't know where the other one is.
What?
The fact is this. To be honest with you, they don't know where a lot of things are in the ocean. When they start going into the ocean, there's stealth technology they use in the ocean. Russia has opted to spend most of their money in ocean-borne technology. Right? Russia did this. So Russia has a series of underwater craft that are unrivaled. They are seriously unrivaled.
Does Russia have the advantage on us under the water?
They have 2 advantages on us under the water. Now, as far as above the water and face-to-face battles, there's a possibility we're matched, right? But remember, while the USA was stalling in funding to our defense system as a whole, right? Russia, they didn't stop. They kept developing. So they keep everything in the ocean. They have been developing. Nobody really knows because it's under the water. And these guys have never stopped. They have spent most of their time underneath the ocean. And believe me, they have fleets of subs all over the place. There is a defense map of where sub shadows have been seen, right? They do this about every 8 hours. And they show up as red dots, right? Every continent is surrounded by red dots. They know they're there. We're talking about multiple underwater craft. They know they're there, right? It's just very difficult to find them sometimes. In some cases, we know exactly where they are. And probably those are the ones that we want to know where they are. One of the admirals, well, a couple of them said that if you toss anything overboard on a ship, right, on one of these ships, one of our ships, U.S. ship, you're going to hit Russian sovereignty, meaning that a boat is like a sovereign nation. Right? If you attack a boat, if you attack a ship, you have attacked a nation.
Right.
And so one of the admirals was saying, if you throw something overboard, you're going to hit Russia. No matter where you throw something overboard, you're going to hit Russia. Now, coming from an admiral, that's a pretty big statement, right?
Yeah.
And he meant that. And so that stands right now as we speak today. And Russia can absolutely devastate any nation he wanted to, almost without impunity. Because if they struck us with an underwater nuclear device, we can't just strike back at Russia. You have to confirm the strike. You see how complicated that is.
Yes.
That's why Russia didn't develop a lot of earthborne technology, but under the ocean, yes. Because if somebody hits somebody else with a nuclear weapon, torpedo, whatever the case is underwater, you have to verify. Right. And then you strike. That's procedure. Right? So, they're going to call a bluff. Russia's going to call anybody's bluff who is in this international order in his attempt to destroy it. Remember last week when I was telling you that if you started hearing international order on television, that's when you better watch it.
Well, that's why I bring it up, because I heard it 2 days ago when I heard it right out of Vladimir Putin. I mean, he said, this is the end of the American world order, he called it.
Wow.
And then later the conversation moved to international world order, which is really what he meant. When he said American world order, he meant international, because America is the leader of the international order.
Well, in NATO, in the UN, a couple of people let me know at the UN, they sent me video clips they used. They said that Russia was a threat to the international order. They said this at the UN before they passed the legislation that went out that condemns Russia, collectively condemn Russia on this. So they actually use that word at the UN. Whenever they do this, they're defending what they have built. They're defending it. Now, isn't it odd that only Putin is a threat to it? Isn't that odd?
Yeah.
They didn't say anything about China. They didn't say anything about North Korea. They just said Russia.
Yeah.
That's it. They didn't say anything about Iran. They just said Russia.
Yeah. Maybe it's because we don't want to start we got enough problems. We don't want to have a conflicted front on 5 different fronts, although we really are still in them. Let me ask you this question, Mike. Let's move to this another area, because you talk about doomsday here. The doomsday approaches. Gamma ray. A gamma ray hit the Earth today. It actually hit yesterday, I guess. It was the largest gamma ray ever to hit the Earth. They renamed it GRB for Gamma Ray Burst 221009A. They think it came from a exploding supernova somewhere, 2.4 billion light years away. And then I read another article that says that this was an extreme wave of energy. And when I saw it, I said, bingo, Mike from around the world, 8 years ago, waves of energy. Is that what happened, Mike?
It was. Well, that's a source from a few. That's a source from a few. And believe me, there's some track coming inbound. Whether it surprised them or not, maybe a university, not your mainline folks who are able to see these things. It didn't surprise them.
I mean, you told us about it 8 years. It was. I went back and checked 2014. 2014, you said, "Oh, Paul, there's 5 waves of energy coming." You know? So yeah, you guys have known this.
Now, this is similar, but I want you to think of it this way. Let's take Beetle guys, right? Yeah. And everybody looks at Beetle guys. Let's say it exploded right now, right? Okay. You wouldn't have to worry about anything. It can explode all day right now. So it would take that thing is 650 light years away. Okay. Estimation. Right, so that's 650 years. It'd take a long time for it to get to us. Right. That's why they don't really worry about anything over 50,000 50,000 light years away. So, but think of it this way: the Earth has been going through a very kind of region of space with nothing in it. Right. Part of a cloud that part of a rocky cloud that this very things are here and there, not really dense. As of last year, or the beginning of this year, we started moving into the thick part of the cloud. So already at the heliosphere, there's been some perturbers. There's been some interesting developments. There's been some stuff, which is why they were going to spend any amount of money they could to get James Webb out there. Not so people can get nice pictures of galaxy formations, this, that, and the other, as a side thing. No, this is so they can see this cloud. It's kind of like we want a camera at the head of the car so we know what we're driving into.
It's not so we can get pretty pictures of the galaxy. We got to get our hands on what's coming. We know it's coming, and we got to know what we're dealing with. Is that what you're saying?
They have to know density. They have to know. They need better estimates as far as proximity, right? Because I'm telling you now, we're going to get smacked multiple times. Not just 1 or 2 Pascal. I'm talking about thousands of times. We're going to get smacked. There's no way we're going to miss it. It's going to change life on Earth. It will. We're going to get smacked. We're heading into this thing.
So doomsday is approaching. I mean, I'm not joking around when I put that as a title. I mean, doomsday.
No, it's a pretty good title. It's a pretty good title. In fact, I was going to give it a tonight of January 5th, 2023.
What January 5th of 1/5/23. What is that? What's that date for?
Well, we're in proximity to something that's very threatening to this solar system. And on that date, with this stuff is going to enter into the solar system. From there, it's just a few days before it ever gets close to the Earth. And from that point, we're going to have to deal with some things, right? Things are going to change abruptly. I believe that, a lot of people have a good idea of this, right? So war is going to become secondary to some things we're going to face in the very, very near future, which is somewhat disturbing, because if people knew about a greater threat, right, they're not going to care about war. If you already estimate that you're going to lose a billion people, you're not going to worry about the fallout from a war.
No, you're right. War is secondary, and war is really about getting control of the resources, because of how nation's going to survive after the event that's coming.
Yeah, they've been like us. You know what? In the Baltic regions, they have an order for 2 months. They need to have all the underground facilities, all the underground bunkers refurbished. They have to do this within 2 months. Okay, they don't have 3 months; they have 2 months. They need all of this done because we're entering into a window, right? And this window is not going to go away. It's not something we watch for and say, "Oh, nothing happened." Then it goes away. No, they have to have everything ready in 2 months. 2 months.
2 months. Okay, January 5th, 2023. Something's going to enter our solar system. Maybe, is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then after that happens, and we got this James Webb telescope out there looking to see what we're dealing with here. We know something's coming. How bad is it? How thick is it? How many rocks are in it, or whatever? How many ways? Once they see it on the 23rd, they know about how much time we have before it really waxes, right?
They're doing that right now. They're trying to see how thick it is right now as we speak. Okay. They are analyzing a lot of data right now. They know 17 dates right now. January 5th, 2023 is just one. It's just one date. They know 17. These aren't going to be dates. It's something, people will find out very quickly. If we haven't already reached some type of red point by that time, right? Because we still have to make it through. Nobody's warning about winter. I don't know why they aren't. But anyway, we still have to make it through the winter. And we live in a time where things are very volatile, right? Keep in mind that the winter people cannot really travel. Given the weather that we've had, we know that the atmosphere has a much larger potential of holding moisture. All this rain is going to equate to snow. And when that snow falls,
special deal tonight, your love gift of $50. Can you believe this, Schmuck?
Due to fluctuations in temperatures, we're going to have snow, ice. That makes it very difficult to travel. The roads can't quite take that. During that time, we're going to have poor.
I miss Kenny, Di. I really like Kenny.
Visuals on heat plumes from the U.S. and Europe and all these places. And we know that magma is also on the move. Magma will begin to change geology, period. We're going to see islands raising up. We're going to see more underwater eruptions, sustained eruptions. The sky, the atmosphere, and everything else is about to get real dirty.
I think of Pat as well sometimes. Every 2 or 3 months, I have a good think about him.
We're talking about all this is beginning right now. It's not going far. It's beginning right now. And so it's a build to a pretty big crescendo, right? I'm looking for some large-scale volcanic eruptions. We have not had large-scale volcanic eruptions, and I'm looking for those. I'm very watchful for those. I know they're coming. Yeah. And I'm trying to track magma as best I can. They are coming. We have not had one. Mount St. Helens was not a large-scale eruption.
What?
Mexico did not have any large-scale eruptions. Nowhere on New Zealand was not a large-scale eruption.
Tonga?
We didn't have a large-scale.
What about Tonga?
No, it was not. It was not a large-scale eruption. But we are about to have some large-scale eruptions. The pressure buildup has been too much. We haven't had any release points that were sustained release points. Although we have, hundreds of volcanoes active, spewing out gas and everything else, it's just not enough. Right? So, it's just not enough.
So, okay, 17 dates, January 5th, 2023, but 17 significant dates they know about. We got the James Webb telescope out there looking as far into the future as possible, see what we're dealing with. Magma's on the move here on the Earth. You've been expecting, you have talked about.
Yeah, Pat was cute. He always wanted to go and have dinner with you and Tracy, Di. and he was always hinting around it, but he never organised it.
Volcanism.
Funny how his dog Muffin is.
Being extremely increasing. You're surprised it hasn't already done it more than what it's done. You're saying that Tonga or Mount St. Helens was not big compared to the events that are coming, and yet Tonga came from bottom of the ocean and put more water in the air than ever that we know of. We can ever record. The sky is going to get dirty. I take it that's dust and particles and
yeah, because they're also getting ready while everybody's looking at war, while everybody's thinking about nuclear war. They have been preparing themselves and retrofitting many things to deal with an ash environment. It's why the government bought up all the farms and built these protective facilities that they can actually grow things in. They have spent hundreds of billions of dollars in technology for soils, right? They're trying to grow things outside of natural sunlight. That's a very big thing. CERN has delegated a lot of their research findings to this.
Yeah, Diane, he was never brave enough to organise it, though. That's what made it so cute.
Cause so they can grow food without natural sunlight. They have replicated natural sunlight.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. They know at some point people are going to be underground, and so they're trying to produce an artificial sun because they want to capture some of the wave emissions from the sun or life sustaining. We can't survive without that. They know that we're going to go through at least 8 months of a cold period before anybody can surface again and really survive. So we are really entering into some very different days. Nobody has ever been here before. Nobody. Our generation will likely, we're walking into that door now. This thing could actually unfold. Things like this could unfold within a 10-month period.
Is this going to, will the world start calling for a world leader? Because of asteroids coming in, fireballs, volcanism exploding, dusty.
King Charles, when he was Prince Charles, mentioned the coming world leader will need trillions of dollars for climate action. He actually said there's a coming world leader.
Ash in the air.
I'm sure they will.
I'm sitting here saying I don't think Joe Biden's the guy. Okay, I don't think Vladimir Putin's the guy.
No, they're not going to deal with these. They can't deal with these.
No,
people don't have confidence. They don't have confidence in them right now. Right?
No,
it's a big issue. People don't have confidence in world leaders. Right. Something happened.
Father Malachi Martin said. Father Martin said, the world is going to face insuperable problems. There has to be, and there will be, an individual who can solve some of the impossible problems, and the world will embrace him. Is that scenario setting up?
Yep.
I'm saying it is.
Yep.
Think of California, right? We know that if we have large-scale volcanism, the sky is going to be full of ash. Okay. Ash causes bad problems within the body. It will kill a lot of animals, most plant life, and everything else. During this time, we're going to have earthquakes. It's impossible that a volcano of that magnitude would go off without large earthquakes, right? Because of tectonic plates, they're going to be shifted. During that time, people are still going to be living. They're still going to be here living, but life will be disrupted. You have certain regions, people have set up power grids in a certain way. They think, for example, in the middle of the USA, they found some issues in the middle of the USA. They have done deep rock scans. In the USA, the entire USA is not as stable as they thought. It is not as stable as they thought. Of all places in the USA, there's a high probability that near Mexico, those places will not be touched. Ironic, isn't it? But the rest of the places in the USA have too many fractures going down pretty deep. In fact, magma is starting to penetrate places where they never thought it would. So as time continues to go on, we're getting a better and better picture of what underneath our feet look like. And it is far different than what anybody ever speculated or thought about, 20 years ago. It's real different. These deep scans revealing some very dangerous things. So in truth, there is no safe place anybody can go to, right? There's none. If a person thinks a place is absolutely foolproof and safe, they are deceiving themselves. I would say this as far as preparations: make sure they know Christ. That's a safe place to be. Everything else is not safe, because the world is going to get some surprises, and the USA is going to see this with other countries. Write this one down, Pastor Paul.
All right.
Places where people think are safe. They're about to get a demonstration that those places are by no means safe, and that anything has a potential to crumble. Anything.
Well, you want to
anything.
know? Okay,
any place.
you know, one of the places that people think is safe is the Ozark Mountains. We hear this all
the time. USA. Well, no, the Ozarks. No, they're not as safe as. Unfortunately, through deep scans, I hate to say this because people have invested a lot of money in being in the Ozarks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A place is not going to keep a person safe. It is not going to keep a person safe.
Yeah, in other words,
we're going to get an example of that.
No,
yes.
There is no physical location. It ain't Colorado Springs.
No.
It's Jesus Christ. It's supernatural.
Yes, it is.
You have to get into this.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And I agree with you 1,000%. That's why Jesus told us that these catastrophic events are going to come. But don't let your heart be troubled, he said. Okay? If you believe in me, you have to believe in him.
Right.
You have to abide in the vine. But you know what? People are so naturally carnally minded. We're thinking, well, if I own a spot somewhere in the Ozark Mountains or something, or up in Colorado Springs, I'll be okay. The truth is, you're not going to be okay anywhere. You're saying that the whole world is going to face catastrophic. I mean, I read the Bible. It tells me there's 2 deep impacts in Revelation 8 that wipes out 1/3 of the ships in the ocean. I read about a war in Revelation 9. It kills 1/3 of the world. I read about pandemics and catastrophic diseases and things that are going to just be absolutely devastating. Food shortages and famines and lack of water. So why in the world would we think, is it because it's always about, if I'm here, I'm safe, and it's those people out there? We've got this mentality
you know what I think? I think, Pastor Paul, that a while ago, before we actually had the ability to see land underneath our feet as a whole, I think that people were really concerned about their families. That's understandable.
Right.
They wanted to go to the safest place possible. I think that the Navy did. The Navy did tell people, this area is going to be covered in water, this area.
Yeah.
And so naturally, to protect your children, you're not going to move right there in the ocean. You're going to say, well, let me get my kids to the safest place I can be. And that's why I hate to say it, because people have invested so much of their time, energy, and everything else in these places, only to have new technology reveal that's not the case. It's just not the case. Those are, in fact, fracture points, and Colorado's the least safest place anybody could ever be. So, I hate to say that because a lot of people, they didn't know. The more we know, by way of technology, the more we know, the more we're going to reassess the entire issue. It's kind of like those who believed in Revelation 100 years ago, very different than how they believe in it now.
Because
they thought 100 years ago.
Yeah, technology is now caught up with the prophecy. Now, 100 years later, like, whoa, now that we know what we know, that has a whole different meaning.
That's right. We're able to observe, and people are not saying, well, it can't be that, because I don't believe in that. They're not doing that. That's why, in my case with Revelation, I'll know Revelation, but I don't want to interpret Revelation. I'm going to always be wrong. I'm going to just watch it unfold. But at least I'll know what Revelation is, so I can interpret it as it happens, because there are some elements that people don't know about yet. Like, for example, there's a lot of people have heard this. We're not the only ones here, right? But it's not aliens, Pastor Paul.
No.
The last time the flood came, how in the world can a person go underground during a flood and be safe from the water and emerge later on? Even the Bible said there were Nephilim before the flood and also after that. Right. So how can they go underground and do this, though, in Indian culture? In a lot of places they say that. Well, guess what? Do you not know that the military-industrial complex went and inspected and investigated every single last one of these cases? They went underneath the earth. A lot of them did not come back. Delta operators are specifically trained for certain security missions for those who do surveys underneath the earth, and some of those don't come back either. There are horror stories about very big people who these things are just big people. We're not talking about some creature from Hollywood. No, we're talking about think of a man, right, that has double bone density, right?
Okay.
A man that's very dense. A hand. Can you imagine a hand that's 4 times as wide as yours?
No.
Right? With the strength to crush a rock. People with double row teeth on the top and the bottom, right? Visible sinus cavities. on their faces. Just start thinking about that. And they have elephant-like skin, very thick skin. They stink to high heaven because they don't really have access to water or anything down there. So just think of a big person like that. But just don't think of one. Don't think of one. Don't think of one. Think of millions of people like that underneath the earth.
Do they have red hair?
Red, brown, black.
6 fingers.
Yeah, but they look like us. They look just like us. They have very wide noses, very flat
they look
faces,
like us, but
pronounced chins.
Maybe 4 times bigger.
Yeah, you're looking at a person that's probably, I'd say probably maybe 7.5, 8 foot tall normal.
Yeah.
Up to 18 feet tall, right? But here's what I'm saying though. Imagine a person your height that could take a car and shove it in your yard. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
People have enormous strength and stature, just strength all over the place, right? No necks. They don't have any necks. Can you imagine somebody's neck that starts at the earlobe? And think of it that way. They're not covered in hair like this, but they're wearing animal skins and stuff like that. There's stuff all draped around them. They stink to high heaven. This is what I'm talking about, what we're facing. And eventually, mankind is going to have to deal with that. They will most certainly deal with that. So people ought to get ready for that stuff. While everybody else is in this conventional world, they're going to be reacquainted with the spiritual things. How about this? The Navy actually had a run-in 2 weeks ago with something that has 6 flippers again. Right?
6 flippers?
And also, Pascal, do you remember, I think I was on your show. I think it was on your show. We were talking about manatees before anybody ever said anything about manatees. And I was talking about these serpents that the Coast Guard were finding in Florida. They were keeping that under wraps.
Yeah.
But that they caught these serpents eating the manatee.
Yeah.
And that they would have to come up with some type cover story because the manatees are going to go missing, right? Then I just kind of let it go. That's exactly what they did. Oh, the manatees are starving. No, they're not. They're being eaten.
Some kind of Megatron sharks, or are they something totally different?
These are just some big, oversized, serpent-looking things, right? Think of a regular sea snake. Think of a sea snake,
okay,
right?
Okay.
But think of a sea snake that has a girth of 4 telephone poles.
I mean, you're talking that's bigger than any anaconda. Okay, you're talking about the Leviathan of the Bible. You're talking about Leviathan.
Well, you have whales out there, right? Whales that weigh 2,000 tons. So think of a 2,000-ton snake or serpent-like looking thing, right? There you go. The underwater, deep in the oceans, is being shaken up. Deep in the oceans, stuff is being driven up from down in those places. Right? We already know that there are oceans inside the earth, and that water has never touched.
Yes, we do
our
know that. The
water.
Bible says that God separated
through
water from the water.
earthquakes, right? Through earthquakes, some of the rock that was dividing these places has been interrupted. Pressures have equalized. So guess what? Whatever was in there can come out in our waters.
Yeah.
As simple as that.
Yeah.
So you're not looking at alien life forms. Nothing came through a dimension. None of that stuff. You're looking at standard creatures that were just separated for a long time. They just did not, they didn't dwell in our natural oceans in large numbers. But now that's changing. So some of the animals that people think are extinct, this, that, and the other. For example, this year they found 4 more extinct creatures of big size. One's the size of a hippo. It was supposed to be extinct, but we know now it's not extinct, right? It's not. Okay. It has a long neck. It has 2 eyes on the top of the head, right? It looks like it's real white and milky looking with a coating of mucus all on the outside of it. It's pretty, nasty. It has 4 flippers. It looks like a prehistoric creature, but a slimy one, right? That's what it looks like. But we now know those things exist.
Any pictures? Brock, you got any? Can you put some Brock's? I can hear Brock in the control room going, "Oh." Yeah.
But they're finding. My point is, through earthquakes, right? Through regions of the earth that nobody can ever get to.
Loose. In other words, these earthquakes.
It's being broken down.
And the magma moving is, and the earthquakes and the supervolcano that are becoming awakened is releasing these things.
And shifting, just like their lobsters. They're lobsters that are about, I think they're about 5.5 feet long. They hang around these volcanic domes. Can you imagine a 5.5 foot lobster?
I did hear that.
They're almost clear. They hang around waters that are 600 degrees. right? They're starting to come away from these places, from these plumes, and they're migrating to other places, just gobbling up everything. But it's not some strange new species. It's just something that we don't
So
normally
we know
interact
about
with.
this stuff. You're telling us about this stuff. We've known about this
Yeah.
for a while, that these creatures from the deep, the under the ground creatures, that they're beginning to move and starting to surface, and
That's right.
and they're going to be eating up the manatees. They're going to be eating up a lot of things, apparently, because they're carnivores or some type of.
Same thing on the land. Same thing on the land. We have deep holes in the earth, right?
Yeah,
People have found them digging mines. Earthquakes break places apart. Wildlife is being driven out of these things that were in cavernous places are coming out, right? They find feral people all the time, which means a person who did not grow up with society. They grew up with animals, a standard person, right? They find them all the time in every single country. Every single country. But there are bigger feral people out there. There's some even bigger ones than those, right? And so something is starting to, these things being reintroduced. They didn't come from space. They've been here. There's even policy. Do you know there are certain policies? And here's what the policy states. If too many of these things come topside, authorization of a nuclear weapon to blow up that place where they do exist or came from is authorized in the USA. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
That's an actual policy. That's an actual procedure, that because nothing can stop them, and they seem impervious to bullets and everything else. And so the only thing, we don't have a weapon right now that could absolutely just tear them apart and kill them, right? Because there have been cases where Sabo has been fired at these things, and it just didn't work out too well, right? Their skin is so thick that explosive rounds will push back. Their skin is very dense. So that must mean they're very old, right? Thickened skin. Yeah. And because they're flexible, right? They'll be pushed back. Not like a rock that'll stay in one position and absorb or be exploded by all that pressure. In this case, they'll just be blown back and they get back up and do it again. So they're incredibly resilient. So there are policies against these things. And there are certain areas that, all these wildlife reserves that people see. All these natural grounds that people see that they preserve them. They don't want you going in there doing this, that, and the other. That's for a reason, because they know there are known places these things do exist. They want nothing to do with us. But
they don't.
They want nothing to do with us. But through all the instability in the earth, they're just being driven from their normal places. That's it. That's it. They're just being driven up from wherever they were.
So when I read the Revelation, it tells me Apollyon's going to come out of this pit. And he's got like these wild-looking scorpions and locusts and creatures like we've never heard of it before. We could be actually talking about creatures.
We could, because they are commanded not to touch any green thing,
right?
Not to touch anybody with the seal of God on the forehead,
right?
So they're only, and they don't go out to kill, they torment.
Yeah.
So you're looking at something that's, you're looking at something that's like, that's obedient to God, right? But that has no problem doing what they have to do to humanity, to people that are not marked. And to this day, feral people, they don't want anything to do with an average person, right? But they do seem to be threatened by aggressive people.
Okay.
Right? They always react or run out of where they are, these aggressive folks. It's not like you can pick up how a person is by being in proximity to them.
Yeah.
So animals do the same thing. So will a feral person have that same perception, that same strength of perception to tell? So it's, there we are.
Mike, this is mind-blowing. I mean, I'm just going to be honest with you. It's mind-blowing for probably 95% or 99% of the audience, because it's not out of the realm of comprehension, because of so many things in the Bible speaks about these supernatural beings that we've known about before and after the flood. So because we know that, why should we be shocked about these beings still be around, and even others that have never been even revealed? So what you're saying is we now know about these. It's being discussed within the Pentagon. It's being discussed in the world. And when Elon Musk says, look, why don't we just look for another planet somewhere to live on? It's because some of this stuff is being known. So you're saying we've got big problems. We've got bigger problems than Putin and the oil prices. We've got incoming asteroid, meteorites, dust, ash. We've got pole shifting. We've got volcanism. We got things that's going to be coming out of the earth. We've got big, big, big problems, which means you need a big, big savior, is what I'm hearing you say. Is that way the Lord has been telling me all this time? Paul, let me give you a clue about a few things that are happening now. You better get people to Jesus. You better get people to Jesus. And right now they're blowing us off because they can't see these things, but you're saying these things are going to be revealed. I've heard you reveal things in the past and that blew my mind, and then 4 or 5 years later, it happened. So you're blowing our minds again today with these milky, slimy creatures that are crawling out of different parts of the earth and the water and everywhere else. So I'm listening. Okay, I'm thinking
that's going to cause some fear. That's going to cause a lot of fear too.
Yeah. Will it ever get revealed to the? I mean, it has to be revealed, right? We're going to see them.
Yeah, everybody's going to see them. Everybody will know, and in that time, as this happens, it's part of the issue with secrecy. It's not so much that something has come from another world. It's just that people are not going to be able to live their lives with a smile on their face, having knowledge that they're on the earth with something like that.
Well, are people going to lose their minds? I mean,
yes, they will. Yes, they will. A lot of people will have heart attacks by just knowing that something like that exists. People will, they'll have heart attacks from being so paranoid. It's happened to soldiers. Surely it's going to happen to the civilian population when this takes place, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we've already, I personally say the threshold has been crossed. It's already been crossed. And so, we're headed in that direction. My advice to everybody is, the call is going out that Christ is coming back. People ought to get themselves ready for real.
Right.
Get themselves ready. And especially this winter, be ready to deal with, just get yourselves ready. Get yourselves ready for this winter because it could be challenging. But get yourselves ready.
You've been saying that. I think you've been saying that for at least 6-8 months. All that this winter could be, if we survive the winter, if we can get through this winter. In other words, there's some things going to take place this winter. You're seeing a change in the climate drastically. Okay, snow, ice, snow, ice, snow, ice. That means power outages. People can't travel. The supply chain disruptions.
That could be people. I tell you what, they'll have some money in their pocket, but they may not have the product. They have to be smart. No one should waste anything right now, but be smart, and that way they can exercise responsibility in getting ready for this winter because we don't know how bad it can get. We don't know that, and people should be wise during these times. They should be wise, very wise.
Mike, I almost want to say next Thursday night we need to do Doomsday 2. I mean, I think that what we just uncovered today is not only the major events coming in on us, but the things that are crawling out of the earth and how they're tied with the Bible. And I think maybe you may have more you could share. Can we just pick up this subject again?
Sure, we can. There's a lot more, and it's more practical, spiritual, of course, but practical and closer to home than people think.
So we'll touch this. We'll do Doomsday 2. We'll do that again.
Yeah, we can. We can.
All right. And it sounds like we better get our hearts right with the Lord now while we can.
Amen.
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 Mike, thank you so much for being here. It's really shockingly revealing. But then again, it makes my mind spin and think of things in the Bible and think, wait a minute, maybe that's what that meant. Maybe that's what that was trying to say. I'll be digging this week.
Well, Pastor, it's always an honor. God bless you, brother.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be with us. God bless you. Appreciate it.
All right.
Bye-bye. Mike from the world, folks.
Okay, before we plug something, I'll go back to that UFO one. Where is it? Hang on. There it is. Actually, I'll do this one.
If you suffer from muscular aches and pains, you want a massage gel that provides effective relief. Try.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Prophecy Roundtable for
do our best to get to those. So, hey, Judd, it's great to see you.
Hey, good to be seen, Doug.
And there's Douglas Woodward.
Dave.
Welcome.
Hi, Dr. Judd.
Hey, Doug, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. So are you involved in that fight with Ashley Judd and Winona Judd?
I am thoroughly and absolutely not involved at all.
I saw the Judds were having a big fight. It just occurred to me I should ask you and see if you got involved. Of course, that's a little different when it's your first name versus your last name.
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's why I reiterate I'm absolutely in no way, shape, or form involved.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, so Judd, tell us about maybe kind of bring everybody up to speed on what's a chimera, right? What's a cryptid? That's probably something that maybe is less well known. I think probably most people know what hybrids are. There have been enough sci-fi movies to bring us up to speed on that. So yeah, kind of give us the lowdown of that.
Yeah, sure. Well, a chimera, of course, that comes from Greek mythology, the etymology of that word itself, and you're talking about a creature that's made up of multiple other creatures, bits and pieces of other creatures. And a cryptid is just modern parlance for animals that may that are sort of outside of the conventional taxonomy of animals that we have recorded. So things like Dogman or Sasquatch, or even a number of chimerical kinds of creatures. Like there have been sightings from this part of Texas all the way into Maryland of a goat man, which is basically in the shape of a satyr from Greek mythology. So that, just in terms of taxonomic nomenclature, that'll kind of give the audience an idea of what we're talking about as we go forward this evening.
Wow. Do you think these are increasing in the last days, or have these been something that's have always been around, and maybe we're just now hearing about it more? Or what's your thought on that?
Well, yeah, my sense of the matter is that just quantifiably there are more sightings of these kinds of things now, and that may, on the one hand, it could have something to do with the fact that we're just equipped with better tools to record sightings and encounters. But on the other hand, there may be something significant about it in terms of biblical prophecy, particularly those that deal with the material that we find in books like Revelation. But they do certainly seem to be popping up more often now.
Wow, so this is kind of, I mean, are we talking about werewolves? Are we talking about Mothman?
Sure.
Are we talking about some of these, of course, Sasquatch, right?
Sure.
I know somebody, I've actually met somebody who claims that she saw a Bigfoot, and she didn't want to tell anybody because she thought everybody would think she's crazy. And I don't think she's crazy, but she said she saw it. So it's pretty interesting,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think it is too. There, with some of these animals, there are really two ways to go. Like with Sasquatch, it could be that we're dealing with a very elusive main species, and there's just a purely naturalistic explanation for it. But then you have people who have sightings of this thing that are accompanied by UFO sightings, claims that this thing manifests out of nowhere through some kind of portal. So some of them, a hefty chunk of them, in fact, some of these accounts actually reference, an accompanying paranormal activity. And you also referenced things like werewolves and Mothman. Right here in Texas, just up the road from me, a couple hours in the Panhandle, there have been a number of Mothman sightings up near the town of Crosbyton, and my buddy Joe Taylor has recorded a number of those accounts from the people that actually experienced these encounters. So yeah, I would say that in general, that sightings are on the rise. The other one that I think of off the top of my head was, this is just within the past couple of months, there was a dogman werewolf sighting in Amarillo, Texas, where I used to live. So, you know, they do seem to be popping up more and more. Now, as to the mechanism or means of their reappearance or supposed reappearance, you know, it may be that we as humans are now reacquiring the ability, the technology to splash things at a genetic level that hasn't been done since the Genesis 6 experiment, which your audience will be so familiar with.
Is there any thought in your mind that, you know, when you said the appearance and then or sudden manifestation? I know our buddy Gary Stearman mentioned to me he suspects that if they're there, they're actually sort of a supernatural, you know, like a demon or whatnot that is manifesting in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wonder.
Well, that's entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I think that's entirely possible. Like I say, I've heard more and more of these sort of encounters that involve a kind of supernatural element to them, and I think it's entirely possible that at least some of the sightings are demonic entities. I've even heard people go so far as to say they were remnant populations, feral populations of ancient giant tribes. That to me seems tenable. I used to, when I was in graduate school with my anthropology degree, I remember reading some stuff that Grover Krantz had written. He was an anthropologist at Washington State University, and he thought that Sasquatch were remnant populations of Gigantopithecus. And so for the longest time, I was just purely naturalistic in, you know, my beliefs about Bigfoot, until I started to hear more and more of these encounters.
Screen froze.
He froze. Oh no. Well, all right. Well, while we're waiting for him to come back.
Yeah, Diane, you seen the footage of kangaroos beating people up and beating dogs up? They're tough little buggers.
I brought up Isaiah 13. This is the King James Version, just so people know. But it talks about satyrs that shall dance there. All right, wow. So this is the word se'avim, or se'il. So it's something that's hairy, kind of shaggy. So you can see there in the definitions, according to BDB, that satyr may refer to a demon-possessed goat like the swine of Gadara. So, you know, it's kind of interesting just to kind of figure out, you know, what might be going on there.
You can see satyrs in Jason and the Argonauts when they go to that old Greek tomb and throw a net over it and trap them. They're satyrs.
Dr. Burton, are you back? All right, awesome.
You froze
for a second. Okay, yeah.
An example of an ancient word that I would have no clue what it meant in our King James version of the Bible.
Yeah. So go on. You were explaining about the sightings, and you used to think that it was just
I wasn't pure. Yeah. Right, I wasn't pure naturalist about it initially until I started to hear more of these sightings that were accompanied by all kinds of paranormal phenomena. So it does seem like there's a supernatural into it. Now, they certainly could be demonic manifestations, and I've also heard the idea that they were remnant populations of giant tribes that had basically become feral. That's a possibility too, but I think as the years roll on, I think we're going to find that there is more of a supernatural connection there. And I couldn't help but see as you came in, you were referencing Isaiah chapter 34.
13. Yeah, chapter 13.
Oh,
And,
13. Okay.
Yeah, talking about the satyrs. Yeah, I think you probably have something to say on that. So.
That's not,
certainly.
That's not satyr as in SEDAR, is it? It's like the satyr, you know, like the.
No, oh no, SEDER. Oh, okay. No,
I'm
it's
sorry.
not.
You know, these guys are in sort of a Hebrew thing, you know. So,
that was like a weird dad joke, I think.
I tried. It was like a dad joke.
Hey, Doug Woodward, I'm going to give you an A+ for saying Hebrew and not Jewish. Thank you.
That's right. I did say Hebrew.
Oh, there you go. All right. Point for Doug.
Should have said biblical, but it'd been perfect.
Hey, that biblical, Hebraic, that's all biblical.
All right. Good.
That's funny. Yeah, so go on, Chuck. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the satyrs.
Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
We can see you. Your eyes blinking.
Okay.
Okay. Did you want to kind of maybe give us some insight on Isaiah 13 there on the satyrs and what your research has uncovered regarding those?
Well, my journey down that road really started with my dissertation research on Phineas. I wrote a religious history of Phineas, that really went back to prehistory. But this was really the first time that I became familiar with some of the literature associated with outside of this. And I'll say literature, I'm talking about articles and whatnot, academic articles on topics like satyrs and the direct analog for that in the Levantine cultures, the Sherim, or the hairy. We usually get a really bad translation of it in the English, which I'm sure that you guys will, you in particular, Doug, but all of you probably agree. We get this really weird translation either as hairy ones or he goats, but they're clearly these desert goat demons that were really prolific in the mythology and lore of the ancient Near East. They show up in god form in as Ods and Uds and Adzaga and Maru and the Assyrian Benu. In fact, it's only been a couple of years ago that they found an inscription in a cave in northern Iraq that would have been in the kingdom of Assyria, detailing what this thing looked like and some of the prescriptions that they took to keep it at bay. But very clearly, if you saw this thing in any other context, you would say, "Hey, that looks like Pan," or "That looks like a satyr." So really, that idea is very prolific in the ancient Near East, and there's an argument to be made that that's in fact where the Greeks got that from. The influence of the ancient Near East on Greek culture is well documented. There are several what scholars call Orientalizing periods in Greece's history. But getting back to the shedding, that was sort of my introduction to that world. But I mean, very clearly, not only there, but also in Isaiah chapter 34. There's some very, very, if you're looking at it in the Hebrew, it's very clearly spelled out. And anyone familiar with ancient Hebrew culture, with the language, and certainly the Hebrews living at that time would have been abundantly familiar with these things.
It's the Baphomet, correct? The top left picture there? That's
Well, yeah, that's certainly a later iteration, but that's the same basic.
Is Baphomet one of? Is he a satyr, or are they one and the same? So not like it's a synonym.
This is not my area of expertise, hence why I'm asking.
Nor mine.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have a lot of questions though, so I'll be asking a lot of questions.
Excellent.
Yeah. Well, the Baphomet is an aggregate of a kind of conglomeration. But if you look at it in terms of kind of the satyr form being the basis for it, then that's certainly part of the makeup of the imagery of the Baphomet. And this This imagery is also tied with Azazel, who, we just finished Yom Kippur. Azazel is referenced in the atonement sacrifice, and it is dispatched. The Azazel goat in the atonement sacrifice is actually a mirror, a kind of mimicry of the dispatchment that Azazel himself gets in the pre-flood world from God. And so that I say that just to say that the goat imagery in the Baphomet stems a lot from Azazel, and it also stems from just that root.
We lost him again.
Frozen again.
Yeah, so I pulled up the Azazel. That's how I pronounce it.
Yeah, Azazel. You say potato. You say potato. I say
that's fine. I'm happy. Potato.
We say Azazel down here. So
yeah. South of the Mason-Dixon line.
So anyway, just here's some basic pictures for what it's worth of Azazel or Azazel, just so people know. And just, kind of a little context there. It is talked about in Leviticus, right, where it says that there's going to be a sacrifice Adonai for the Lord, and then there's one for Azazel, okay? And this, of course, begs the question, right? The word Ez is the word goat, and so it could be a goat, but it could also be kind of some of this Seder goat thing, right? This goat Pan type creature.
Sure.
And I kind of lean to the latter. That I think that this is just like you're saying, that it's some kind of a goat god, a hybrid goat god, if you will. But go on.
Right. Please. Well, and what I was saying about the Italian, and Doug, you'll be abundantly familiar with this, I'm sure. I'm certain that you and I have had conversations about it over the years, but the goat to Azazel was not. It's not as if the Hebrews were worshiping Azazel. This was the goat that all the sin was ascribed to, just as all sin was ascribed to Azazel in the pre-flood judgment. But yeah, getting back to the prolific nature of these kinds of goat, half man, half goat creatures, they abound in different parts of the world. In the Americas, you find them, and they even survive in a lot of the tales of Arabic lore in the modern times. There were these giant versions of basically of the Sharing that were supposedly would haunt the mountain passes that caravans would have to go through on trade routes, and the tales go that they would waylay people who were on these roads and basically consume them, eat their flesh. So there's some pretty there always seems to be some sort of nefarious, mischievous, and downright, in a lot of cases, downright wicked and evil motivations for these kinds of entities. And that's certainly true of probably the best known of them, Pan. If you look at Pan in Greek mythology, his behavior is, to put it euphemistically, pretty sprightly. I mean, it's not like he's trying to woo the females he's going after. This guy would be a convicted sex offender, in the modern world.
Wow.
Dr. Burton, just a minute. I just want to address for people that may not have made the connection of what is Banias. So Banias is also known as the Gates of Hades. Right, that's where Jesus took his disciples. It's at the base of Mount Hermon. Right, so
that's right. Yeah.
Right. And
Matthew chapter 16.
Yeah, and so there was a lot of activity, at least as early as 300 or 400 BC, on the part of the Greeks, right? And I think according to your research, it went back a lot further than that, right? But
certainly.
They definitely were worshiping Pan or Pan in that area, and there's a lot of a lot of sexual innuendo is probably putting it too nicely.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, but yeah, that was definitely there, and related very much to what happened on top of the mountain as well, Mount Hermon. So
That's very true.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the modern. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
No, I just please continue.
No, the modern name Banias is the Arabic rendering of Paneas, which is where the site gets its name from. When the Seleucids, actually the Ptolemies, who were descendants of one of Alexander's generals, had control of this region initially, and then they fought a battle actually with the Seleucids at Paneas, at what they called the Paneon at the time. And of course, but I say all this just to say that the Greeks recognized the auspiciousness of the site, and they identified the deity that was being worshipped there with their Pan, and so they dubbed it the Paneon. But Doug, you also pointed out that this region was known as the Gates of Hell, which was a moniker that actually had existed since Phoenician times.
Wow.
And this makes perfect sense because caves in the ancient world were very auspicious for a number of reasons, but probably the most prominent one was that they were entrances into the underworld. And that too is almost a cultural perennial in world mythology, is this idea that caves were somehow connected to the chthonic world, an entrance into the underworld.
Yeah, Scott.
Quick, for all you guys, because you're more knowledgeable on this than I am, but in Daniel it talks about the Prince of Greece and the Prince of Persia. I'm just wondering out loud if this entity, this goat god, might be that head little g god, if you will, that's over Greece. So, what are y'all thoughts on that?
I don't have any thoughts on that.
Well, there is a principality over Greece. There was a principality over Persia.
Right.
Different principalities were established over the nations, and so I just didn't know if is there a primary. I mean, I know about Zeus, but is there a primary, more demonic type of god that holds sway in Greek ancient mythology, which there may be more truth to a lot of the mythology than what we were led to believe as kids growing up. I'll put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is an interesting question. There are some mythologists that think that Pan actually may be the oldest of the gods in the Greek pantheon, that he may somehow predate the Olympians. That may be. I don't know that you could prove that conclusively, but you bring up an interesting question, especially in reference to Daniel. It's pretty clear that he's talking about the gods of the nations, these fallen Elohim that were given, they were given control over different geographical regions of the earth. And it just depends on which author you're reading. And I'm talking not so much ancient or not so much modern authors as I am ancient authors that talk about which deities are in control of Greece at any one point in time, because they do sort of shift around. Just looking at the literature in the Greek tradition.
Interesting. So, Dr. Burton, you and I discussed with you some of my research in cryptic image 2, which I thought was, of course, I thought was interesting. A little biased, but in any event, remember that the sons of God came down on Mount Hermon. And I just forgot my thought. That's really embarrassing. Oh goodness!
We're all getting older.
Thank you. Yeah, I was going somewhere with this. I really did have a destination. I wasn't just trying to throw that in there. But hold on, it'll come back to me. So.
And Doug Woodward forgot to unmute his mic, so we're just all having to do.
We're all just.
I was gonna say, and I forgot your name, Fred. So
Okay, so I guess my thinking was, could there be, could we be seeing some kind of a resurgence with, these ancient gods? I do believe that based on the inscription that we found on top of the mountain, that is an incredibly old site. It's incredibly important. And, as far as, Pan, I don't know, to me, they're all general iterations of Satan in one form or another. Because he's kind of like stuck on himself. And I don't think he likes to share the spotlight as far as I can tell. And when Jesus, okay, this is what I was getting at. So Jesus said to his disciples, right, the gates of Hades will not prevail. And I really believe that what Satan had planned was for the gates of Hades to open up back in Jesus' day. The first century Jewish apocalyptists believed that the gates of Hades were going to open up at any moment. And that these hordes of demonic creatures were going to come out and just raise havoc on planet Earth. Okay?
Like we see in Revelation.
Exactly. And I think what I think what Jesus did is I think he put the kibosh on. He's like, nope, not today, not in this era, right? It'll happen later. We know that from Revelation chapter 9. It will happen. But I think Satan's plan was for it to happen back then. And I think that's why Jesus took his disciples and basically said, this is the real place. This is the real deal. And then he took him up to the mount, on top of the mountain, where he transfigured. And that's where Satan and let's call it Satan's cronies, came back down in the days of Noah. And they did all their hocus pocus and, naughty stuff. All right. And so I think this was really a huge event that Jesus stopped. I mean, I can't absolutely prove that, but I think there's enough circumstantial evidence to suggest that Satan and his crew wanted to open the gates.
I like the way he reasons.
Not right now. So.
And gates, I've always looked at that as like a gate being also a defensive. Again, we could get it. I mean, this passage right now that we're talking about, it's certainly not Peter being the Pope. I think all four of us can amen that immediately. But I believe, I actually think Kaiser got this part right, that the rock he's referring to is the Mount Hermon in that situation. And based on that ancient lore, if you will, and
wow, so the rock the church is built on is not Peter, it's Mount Hermon. That's what they just said, and it makes sense. Wow.
Other evidence that that portal to hell, that portal down below where you have all the spooky, weird stuff. Next time I go to Israel, I do want to go to Mount Hermon, to the base. I went to the top and just kept driving north, but I do believe that is that's what he was doing. Is he was identifying who he was to Satan, to these other powers and principalities. And I've never heard that theory, Doug, but it certainly makes sense that no, you're not getting let out of your abyss, your prison. You can look at a gate like a prison too. In other words, the abyss where they're currently chained, where Satan is not chained right now, but will be chained for that seventh day, that 1,000 years, saying these gates ain't opening up. My ecclesia, I'm going to build my Adah, my congregation of followers, and this ain't doing. This will not have no effect on them as far as being a let out, as opposed to us assailing the gates of hell.
Right. Yeah.
Charismatic, like we're going to attack demons, and no, I don't want anything to do with demons. I don't know. No.
Right. Yeah, and this was a euphemism when they talked about the city. So sometimes it was just called the city, and that was the underworld, right? And so that was very much thought to be a major portal where the demons were trying to get out, right? Yeah, like you said, Scott, it's not that the demons are closing the doors. You're not going to get us. You're not going to get us. No, they're trying to get out. They're not trying to stay in. They're trying to get out. That's the whole point. And
I had never thought about it until you just popped that up, as these gates are just like prison gates. I had to visit. I called you on the way up there. I'm like, I'm going to prison. Thankfully, I get to leave, after a few hours. You don't want to be there. So I'm going to turn.
Yeah, I understand. I think that the word that's actually used there is poulenon for gate. If I'm not mistaken, the Greek is poulenon, which is I mean, the connotation there is, that it's a city gate. I think so.
Diane, in regards to that link you just posted, when they buy gold, they say invest in gold. It's not like you go to the shop and you pay for the gold and they give it to you and you can take it home and bury it. It's not like that. So it's all digital and that. So when it all collapses, you won't be able to get access to this gold. So if you're going to buy gold, I reckon you literally have to take it and get solid gold, real gold, and keep it, because the banks are going to steal it.
Subsequent uses include fortress and prison, both of which I think would be applicable in this case.
Yeah. So this whole area that we're talking about, Panias or Banias, because the Arabs don't have a P in their letter, so it comes out Banias. But this is, of course, where we're talking about satyrs. We already touched on Bigfoot a little bit. Tell us more. I mean, I think it's entirely plausible that we could be seeing an acceleration, maybe, of opening of portals, opening of these weird creatures. I remain skeptical until I see a bit more evidence of some of these particular manifestations. But I think in principle, at least in my mind.
Okay, yeah. It'd have to be that, because you wouldn't invest in digital gold, would you? So you buy the gold, and what? How do you pick the gold up? Do they deliver it or what?
It's very plausible that these could happen.
Good. So
yeah,
can I maybe throw the wrench in, but was wanting to it kind of pertains to what you just said, which is that in days gone by, you had these little supernatural creatures that like fairy circles. You had leprechauns. These were I've read some literature that suggests that these were also demonic entities, but that was the way that they were manifesting at that time, because they didn't have flying machines, so they were manifesting in other ways. And one of the interesting things about the fairies and the fairy circles, one of the stories that they have, or one of the traditions that they had, was that persons that went into a fairy circle might be lost for some number of years, or that they would have a child and then leave.
Check this guy's jacket out. Look at his shoulders. The fabric seems to be moving. I hope you can see it.
And then be brought back to nurture the child, which sounds just like alien abduction. So, just throw that out as another line of thought, because we're talking about other creatures that aren't necessarily aliens, but they're kind of like the satyr, or there's other kind of chimeras and things like that. So anyway,
my friend,
we have one of these pop-up stalls show up in our shopping centre every 3 months or so, and it's to take your old gold in, and they buy gold. Next time they show up, I might actually buy a bit of gold.
He's fascinated with, he's not a believer, but he's fascinated with ancient aliens and Bigfoots and these hybrids and everything. So I texted him, he couldn't watch live now, but he goes, yeah, Bigfoots are hybrids, man. So I'm like, we all agree that, if they exist.
I'm not sure about that.
When I say hybrids, we're sort of talking about Nephilim, if you will. Sort of, I don't know. I've never seen one. Okay, I'm not sitting here up on the stand right now testifying that there are that these things exist.
Right.
But sort of like the UFOs. I haven't seen the UFOs, but the evidence these days is overwhelming for this spooky, supernatural other realm, if you will. Not little green men, but these other realmly beings. And perhaps some of what we're talking about would be a mixture of the natural with the supernatural, and what comes out, or more scientific, they knew back then how to monkey around, pun intended, with DNA, and we're starting to see that now as the technology gets more and more developed and warped and twisted, if you will.
I think Dr. Burton has a whole bunch to say on that. So,
no, I think that we're
share with us.
I think we're awfully close, you know, with some of the stuff that we're able to do now. Yeah, and this is all pertinent, I think, to the end times. Like you say, Doug, until we can actually see these in real form, it's hard to say, you know, with a high degree of certainty that, you know, are they being birthed from our science, or are they purely supernatural, or is it, you know, is it a mixture of the two? Is this Watcher Tech 2.0, you know, that we're sort of dealing with right now? It's hard to say, but it, you know, it makes me think that there's room in the interpretation of passages like that we find in Revelation chapter 9, you know, about these creatures being.
Yeah, Diane, but if I'm going to bother doing it, I might as well go for the gold, because people want gold more than silver. I'm thinking of the markets when you got to swap a bit of gold for some food. I'm thinking of them sort of things.
At least from
like in the Middle Ages.
You know, this army from the abyss. You know, I think it's safe to say that, you know, that's not that army is not quite human. In other words, so I think there's a little bit of interpretive room, I think, there to look at what's going on in the world, because we're also cautioned to, you know, not be like the Pharisees and know how to predict the weather, but they can't read the signs of the times. You know, I think Jesus told them that, like in the chapter in a few episodes before they arrived in Caesarea Philippi, when he encounters them. He tells them that very thing. You guys can predict the weather, but you can't read the signs of the times. Well, that's something that we don't need to be, you know, I don't think we need to be very cautious and discerning about that. And at least be open-minded enough to say that, well, you know, these strange phenomena, you know, do pose, you know, they do have a kind of prophetic ominence to them.
Judd, in your research,
Diane, how do you know bartering is easy with silver? How do you know that?
It talks about how when Israel's invading the land, that God would send hornets, and I don't think those are just little bitty stinging bugs, you know, stinging hornet the way we think of it. Have you ever done any research into that in the ancient cultures, as far as there being any super bugs that would come in and maybe would have destroyed civilizations, like acting at the, you know, maybe under the dominion of a principality, but God uses them as he uses them the way he wants to. They do nothing without his authority. And if he commands a hornet / demon bug to go attack somebody, they're going to do it. They don't have any choice. I think that's why they're going to be tormenting those that take the mark of the beast for that 5-month period. So have you ever done any research on that Hebrew word or any culture?
No, I haven't done any deep dives in that respect, but it is interesting that the insect imagery, particularly you know, swarming insects, which I guess technically you could include hornets as, because.
Let's be honest, guys. This guy should have got out of bed and combed his beard and his hair, but he hasn't. What a slob.
Yeah. If you've ever accidentally or purposefully knocked down a hornet's nest, you do know that they can swarm.
Yeah,
so
they are mean clovers.
They are. But you know, this sort of, whether we're talking about locusts or hornets or what have you, that swarming imagery gives the impression of certainly of overwhelming whatever it's after. Now as to some sort of chimera or creature that's
yeah, I get it, Diane. You don't want a coin valued at $1,600. You'd rather have one valued at $40 silver, because you're not going to get change from anything you give them, I bet. So now I understand why the silver. Thank you.
Associated with that, I don't know, but as you point out, you know, God can use these natural phenomena to carry out His will. But I'd have to look some more into that. I had never actually thought about that. That's an interesting proposition.
I just didn't know if there was anything in culture about like some type of supernatural winged entity as a.
It wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me. I mean, those things show up. Those kinds of things show up in the mythology of cultures all over the world, ancient and modern.
So thank you. I just it's ever since I've read that and I started doing I'm viewing Revelation now more through the eyes of the Torah, through the first 5 books, seeing that there's a recapitulation, and then that led me to seeing these hornet-like creatures coming up out of the abyss, and the hornets basically God said He would fight for Israel.
Right.
And He used supernatural means to do so.
Yeah, well, I think we should look at more and more. I think we should look at Revelation through the lens of the Torah, because, you know, Moses and John are kind of given mirror images in terms of their vision. So neither one of them really have the context, you know, to fully articulate what they're seeing, you know. Whereas John is shown this vision of the end times with things in the world.
Di, can you post that to Skype, please?
In world culture that he's never seen before. Moses is he's being given the same kind of thing, except he's being shown a vision of at least for the Genesis material, the primeval history. He's being shown things that are sending him too. And so that's why this stuff sounds so odd and strange to us, but I think you're right. I think, and I certainly feel that way too, that using the Torah to look at the prophecies in the New Testament is crucial to my mind, because of the almost you know, it's the same mission that Moses and John have, but they're looking at opposite ends of the spectrum.
Diane, there's an Australian one there. There's a kookaburra. There's an Australian coin there. So yeah.
They're looking at the beginning of the taking out versus at the end, where to come
Absolutely.
out and where to be got.
Which means that an Australian company that does it. That's why I'm saying yeehaw.
And to the promised land, where we will finally enter that rest in Hebrews 4 that he writes about, that we haven't entered yet. It's, you know, they were preached the same gospel in the wilderness, and yet they were disobedient, so they did not enter the rest. The adult generation, except for Caleb and Joshua, wandered around for 40 years. In supernatural, they didn't have their clothes wear out. Kids were wearing the same clothes when they were 4 years old as when they were 44 years old. So
You got the kookaburra one, Di?
I see that happening at the end of the age, supernatural stuff. I'm not really worried about the super demon bugs or whatever comes up out of the abyss. Those things didn't touch Israel. Israel got themselves in trouble.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I brought up just this because this is something that I talk about in my book that I discovered. It kind of freaked me out, because this right here is precisely the creature that's predicted to come out in Revelation chapter 9. You can see the scorpion's tail. There's got a sort
cool,
of
Diane.
Got,
thank you.
Eagle's wings. You know, it has the body of a horse, but also, of course, a centaur, man's head, and a lion's head. And you can't see it too well in this one, but these horses' feet actually turn into eagle's talons. So it really is just an incredible description. And what really speaks to me so powerfully is that what John was being shown is something that people in the ancient world had already seen. How did they see this? My suspicion is, well, unless they actually saw it in the physical, I think they probably saw it somehow in some kind of spiritual seance, or somehow they were connecting with that spirit realm, and so they were seeing real creatures that are predicted to come out. And so I think when we start talking about some of these other creatures, whether it's Bigfoot or satyrs or whatever it may be, or Pan, right? That this isn't just weirdness. Like the Bible, it's weird, yes, but the Bible attests to what is coming, and we actually see it, drawn out for us in the ancient world. So I think.
No, that's pretty neat, what you just showed us. It does raise all kinds of questions.
Sounds nice.
Doesn't it though?
Oh, it does.
I know. This is from 1200 BC.
Right.
And like it's it's like you got to deal with it. There it is, And
well, don't you think though that it could well be that the Apostle John in his vision is not that he's remembering that he's seen this before, but that he was inspired to in effect picture the same thing.
Exactly.
And and that it has been it's sort of been, the concept's been there, and it's another way in which it's made relevant to the people that first heard the revelation.
Right.
Hey, Doug, what's the provenience for this? Where was it found?
So this is found in ancient, Assyria. I forget the exact city, but it's called a Kuduru stone.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the city in my book, but it's a Kuduru stone. So this is about 1200 BC. They would put this under the mantle of a house for good luck or whatever it's supposed to be.
Right.
And this is the god Nergal. Okay, and Nergal is the god of the underworld. Okay.
Yep.
Right. Yep. He's the god of the gates of Hades. Right. And he's the dude that, and he has lots of variations on that theme. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's not just one, and you see him way back. I mean, we can go back, and I can show a different. I'll pull up a picture in just a second of basically the same thing. It's called the Anzu bird, and that's from about 3000 BC. And it morphs a little bit over time, but it's the same basic creature.
Yeah.
And So again, when we come to other things like satyrs and Pan. Yeah, it's weird, no question about it. But the fact that we see what John is saying versus and compared it with what we find in the ancient world, it's like, wow, there's really something to this.
Yeah, there it is, exactly. And antique peoples were still thinking. They still had a mythological mind. They were still trafficking with at least spirits of these entities. That mode of thinking, and of course the Hebrews, they thought mythologically too, but it was unless they adulterated it with worshiping Canaanite deities or Phoenician deities or what have you, it was the vision that was given to them by Yahweh, but they're still thinking, in terms of mythology. And we didn't really start to get away from that until really an argument can be made for the Middle Ages, but the nail in the coffin for naturalism and materialism to take over and sort of peripheralize religion and superstition, that was the age of enlightenment. The empirical movement that grew out of the scientific revolution in Europe. To where everything rested on pure empiricism. And so for virtually, as for the most part, for most of human history, that's what we thought. We thought that either dealing with fending off or trafficking, with, depending on what culture you're talking about, these kinds of entities was almost an everyday occurrence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here in this picture, this is from ancient Uruk. So it's I forget the exact date, but it's at least 3000 BC. maybe
Mhm.
3700 BC. So it goes back a
Oh,
very
that-
long way.
That's during the transitional period between the Ugaritic, or not Ugaritic, excuse me, the Ubaid phase and the Sumerian phase.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting, Doug.
Yeah. So you can see there, the hind legs have eagle's talons, right?
Mhm.
You can see the scorpion tail. You can't see the serpent head phallus, but we saw that in the other one. And you can see, that there's two heads there, right? And on that one head, there's something that looks like a crown, right? We kind of think of like a
Yeah.
British royal crown, right? But not all crowns look like British royal crowns, right?
Right.
This looks more like kind of a, ancient Sumerian / kind of Egyptian-ish
Mhm.
type crown. That was something. Sorry?
Kind of a Pope hat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kind of a
A little bit of Pope hat.
Pope
Wonder where he gets that from.
Right. So I don't know if
Thanks, Diane. I'm going to check them out.
you can see, guys, my cursor here, but this other thing, that's the lion's head right there.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't see too much detail on this one.
Right.
But it has all the things that we have in the other one. It's just a whole lot older. And yeah, I mean, this is what was going to come out of the abyss, right? And that's what was
Right.
there where Jesus took everybody to Panias or to Banias,
Mhm.
and he put the kibosh on it. So I'm glad
Right.
he did.
Right. I like the way you put it. You put the kibosh on it. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We got a question from Matt24. Do you guys think that Parsons Hubbard's Babylon working ritual opened a portal so that these sightings of cryptids are more prevalent?
Nick Redford's book goes into this quite a bit. Final Events. Has anybody besides me read that book?
I've not.
No.
Yeah.
I've read some of I've read some of Nick's stuff before, but I've never read that one.
Yeah, that book, he goes into this quite a bit, and I think I was doing a slideshow today that actually came up as I was looking at my slides. But apparently there was this group. It's a long story, but there was this group of people that were doing research. They really believed that they were working as sort of a group underneath the military and out of the Pentagon. And I don't remember how many years ago this was. This was quite a number of years ago. But they came to the conclusion that the whatever these entities were, that they were demonic, and so they said they had a conversation with the people at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, which is where a lot of the supposed actual UFOs are or stored, not just Area 51, and that they attributed a lot to the issue of Babylon working and Jack Parsons, his rituals in the desert. So what I understand, though, is that he may have opened portals to demons, but he also supposedly conjured up a Babylon. What's the right term for it? The Whore of Babylon.
Ritual?
Marjorie Cameron, who became his gal friend. So there's quite a bit of history to that. I've always been suspicious of that because demons don't seem to have a problem manifesting in our times. I'm not sure that they need a portal to be let in.
Yeah.
Does that have anything to do with the CERN theories? I mean, obviously, I watched that.
Actually, that's not true. Rituals bring in demons and all that. So they just haven't got free range like he just made out. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother with rituals, would they?
CERN ceremony, and that might as well have been straight from Babylon.
Yeah.
I mean, again, my wife, ever since in the past few years, since she started to understand the symbolism.
Yeah, but Diane, how would you use it in the end days? How are you going to go to the market with an $1,800 coin?
And everything, and she's been bedridden for quite some time. So obviously, she watches a lot more television than I do. But now she's like, man, Scott, the occult symbolism and everything is everywhere. But I think you'd have to be I think you'd have to live under a rock not to have watched the CERN ceremony. You got something's going on here with some ancient pagan mythology. I mean,
you've got the CERN dances that are like on videotapes. Then you had the it wasn't Gothard. I don't think it was Gotham. Something like Gothard or Gotham tunnel that was opened in the mountains there, connecting Geneva with at CERN with I forget what highway or whatever. But
That was weird.
yeah, I don't know. Judd, I don't know if you saw it, but there were a lot of little creepy little creatures that looked like.
I did.
Like
I did see it. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you
It was.
you were thinking that way.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw it, I was like, this is straight out of well, in particular, there were lots of images from Slavic and Celtic and Germanic mythology.
Yeah.
You know, there were clearly these ancient European and pagan roots that they were trying to make connection. But well, the very acronym CERN is an abbreviation for the name Cernunnos, the Celtic god of the underworld. Yeah.
Just getting ready to say that. Yeah.
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 So it's not, you know, it's more of that hiding in plain sight stuff. I mean,
Right.
really, they're not even trying to hide it. You know, I mean, the people who don't want to believe it or just sort of poo-poo the idea, I think is a little odd too, because you've got all this pagan imagery associated with it. And for goodness sake, there's a statue of Shiva in front of the visitor center.
Yeah, there's that.
God of destruction.
There's that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging because I think they're doing real science, but there's something just off about, like, why are you choosing these symbols? I mean, maybe you're doing good research, but it sure begs the question that maybe you're doing something that's a little
Well, it definitely ties it. The god of creation, Shiva, is actually the god of destruction as well. But in order to create a new world, it has to destroy the world. And it's a little bit like the movie Star Trek 2, where they're going to wipe out the Earth again with the Genesis project or whatever. But it's that concept that the world's going to get wiped out and then be it's like a reboot, you know?
Yeah.
And,
so the whales can have their day.
The best line from that conversation in that movie was, "Look, the man's talking about logic. We're talking about universal Armageddon here."
Yeah.
You gotta love Dr. McCoy. Dr. McCoy puts it in the perfect context.
Yeah, he always had good things to say.
So a question is, see if you can get Doug Woodward to play the piano behind him.
It's only a picture. It's only a picture. It's, if I turned off my background, it's in my dirty office. So, yeah. I would love to live in that house, though. If anybody knows where that is, let me know.
Yeah, really.
I'll make them an offer.
So here's a just kind of a comment, and so Wind Infinity says in one comment, but didn't Jesus command us to cast out demons? That's a question. Yeah. And then here this comment: the majority of Christian churches speak zero about demons, yet Jesus spoke about them and dealt with them constantly. Is that interesting? That is interesting, right? So
again, I just posted it in chat, and y'all can think my wife's crazy. I know she can sometimes see into this realm. She's described it to me. These like I guess visions, or she doesn't describe them as visions. Something that's just sitting right there. Now this has been months ago. I put it in chat since my son moved out. She hasn't seen anything. So keep him in your prayers because he's gotten involved in some of the stuff these kids these days think is harmless, and now he's under repression. And so anyway, so this is real, and so if I could rewind the clock and do it over, my children when they were younger, he would have never watched shows like Supernatural and things of that nature. So can't rewind the clock. So y'all keep them in your prayers. This is what we're talking about. It's very, very, very serious and real, and I'm seeing it in real time in my son's life right now. As far as
and I just want to encourage people that this is very real. But we do serve a God who is all powerful, right? So there's really no contest between God and Satan, right? So I don't want people to think in this dualistic idea that, you know, God's over here and Satan's over here, and they're both vying for who's going to win, right? The only power that Satan has is he can influence us, and then we can make decisions to kind of go down that path, right? But insofar as God's power versus Satan's, there's no contest, right? So if we'll hold close to Abba, then we don't have anything to fear, right? And only when we are tempted and we're drawn away by our own decisions, right? Of course, a little temptation, but we're drawn away, then we can get ourselves in
trouble. Yeah, and in this situation, he opened himself up to it, thinking that it was harmless. Friends of his, acquaintances, other things kids do that I tell him all the time, dude, I can't cast any stones at you, or I just broke my entire college, law school house down with portals, things that kids take that are a doorway to allowing evil into your life, and so without divulging too much else, but yeah, it's real. So
yeah. Unfortunate.
What your wife? I was just going to comment that what your wife experiences is something that a lot of people experience, particularly people that are really sensitive. You know, and so, you know, always a reminder: no, you're not crazy. It's just that some people are close. Some people are close to this, and some people aren't.
Yeah, I haven't seen anything and don't want to. I don't consider it a gift of hers that she can maybe see into this other realm, but it doesn't even frighten her. She said that when it was happening, sometimes they would just look at her like and want her to be scared, and she's like, and they would notice she was looking at her, then they would kind of like smirk away from her. So. and I'm oblivious to it all. So.
Well, that reminds me. There's one of the. This is kind of related to that. Is the concept in, I think it was more in Nordic cultures, the concept of the old hag that would you know, basically appear in someone's bedroom. It's very much like a demonic or an abduction scenario. The Greys, you know, appearing in the bedroom.
Oh, thanks, Doy.
But that's,
I'll check it out when we hang up.
Gone on for several hundred years. So I don't know, Jed, if you run into that.
Yeah, you're talking about old hag syndrome, and its association with sleep paralysis. Yeah, that's probably much older. It's probably millennia old, if not older than that. Yeah. Really, I think at least for the post-flood world, I think the kind of the linchpin in that story, or really the origin, is with Lilith, and not the one that you find in non-canonical lore, but the actual queen of demons. You know, in addition to you know, stealing babies and eating the flesh of children, she was also said to steal the virility of men. And so there's this whole swooping young night demon motif that Lilith fits. I know that Doug can probably speak to this too, with his familiarity with not only the ancient Hebrew tradition, but the Mesopotamian material as well. And of course, she shows up in Isaiah as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Lilith comes from the root Lila, which means night, and so that's where this whole idea comes from. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is though. I think one of the points to make is that this was kind of the thing I was saying earlier about, you know, fairies and leprechauns and all that, is that the supernatural and its deceptiveness has been present.
Yeah, I'll have a look, Doy. I'll have a look now.
And it doesn't. It can shift. It's not about shape-shifting, but it can shift from one form.
No, I got them, Doy. They're all there. Thank you.
Gods or demons behind it. That's my sense.
Yeah. Agreed. You know, I think it's interesting. Oh, I'm sorry, Doug. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. I was just going to bring up a comment, but please go ahead.
No, I was just going to quickly point out that, you know, you've even got writers in the ufology community who in recent decades have come out and made those comparisons, like Jacques Vallée is the first guy that really kind of comes to mind about how you would identify the activities of the so-called aliens. I don't think they're extraterrestrial biological entities. I think they're extra-dimensional. But he said if you look at these kind of activities in other periods, they would be identified as gnomes or fairies or demons, evil spirits. Yeah,
and both John Mack and David Jacobs. I think it was in the abduction stuff with John Mack. He talks about this in an interview, that these beings were saying that they are some kind of semi-materialized race, and they want to come to planet Earth. They want to live with us, and so they're trying to find a way to do that. And I don't see any reason why this could not have been happening for a long time now. That they've been trying to find a way, and then as our collective sense of what is real, what's not, how we got here, our origin story, I think that they're basically keeping up, or maybe they're kind of they're directing it, you could say, as well. But aliens are very much in vogue, and of course not everyone believes in UFOs and all that stuff. But if you look at your average evolutionist or Big Bang theorist or whatever that doesn't believe in God, they'll say, well, look, we believe that there was some ancient race that probably seeded the planet. This is directed panspermia. There's a lot of big names that are okay with this, right? Richard Dawkins, he talks about this, right? In No Intelligence Allowed.
Where they come from.
Yeah, we can't believe in God, but we can believe in some ancient aliens that got everything started. So that's very much in vogue, but it's the same basic thing that we've been looking at forever. So here's a question by Herminio Suazo. Are these creatures fallen angels embodied in a physical manner, or creatures created by them? That's an interesting thought. So are they embodied by, are these fallen angels embodying these things, or are they creatures that are created by the fallen angels? Any sense on that?
I would suspect that they're not fallen angels, that they are demonic entities. I think fallen angels have a lot bigger stuff going on. That's my first reaction. There's probably more to be said, but it's my first reaction.
In my opinion, demons and fallen angels are the exact same thing, but I know that.
Oh, you're so wrong too about that. But anyway,
I'm so right, dude. Linguistically, they're the same thing.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Linguistics has little to do with it. Whether
it's got a lot to do with it, man.
Conceptually, they're quite different.
Hey, speaking of this, I want to ask Judd about this. What about the reptilians? Would they, and for you too, Doug, would they be more along the lines of like a Nephilim hybrid, if they exist or not? I mean, I've seen the videos that they've shown. I don't know if they're doctored or not, and I'm going to say any name for all of a sudden somebody's eyes, like famous people's eyes, go lizard, snake eyes on them.
Yeah, Queen Elizabeth, right, had the reptilian eyes.
Yeah. No, I wasn't going to say names. George.
Yeah. Well, what's the English sportscaster, David? What's his name that has these 4-hour talks that he gets up and does? I can't think what his name is, but he's very famous. He's been
David Icke.
Yeah, David Icke.
That guy's on the false light train, by the way. He's waking people up to other falsehood.
He's right.
Oh, I think so too. Although there's some interesting overlap between what he's saying and some of the things that we say.
Oh yeah, he's talking exactly what we're talking about. He calls them. He believes that yes, there is a reptilian. There are these hybrids. There are these very, very evil people who want to take over the world, and we must awake and seek the light, and the good of humanity will overcome them. Again, that's why I'm calling it the false light, the Hegelian dialectic, if you will, the left versus the right, the Democrats versus the Republicans. So
Which
the
is
reptilians
just,
versus the good angel guys who aren't really good.
Yeah.
They're angels of false angels of light, if you will. So
yeah, I think one possibility there is that they're, you know, if they are visible at all, then they may be fallen seraphim, you know, because the seraphim are described as having sort of reptilian serpent-like skin. You know, it's got that iridescent kind of quality to it that some reptiles do. Doug, what do you think about that? Have you thought about that before?
I'm sorry, I was looking at the questions.
what about the seraphim having a reptilian type of quality?
Oh yes, okay, yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's entirely plausible. I mean, we have the four faces of the. I think cherubim and seraphim are exactly the same thing.
Interesting on that, real quick. Interesting that you have the four faces and the four kind of animal groups kind of in there, but you don't have the reptilians.
That's
you got some birds, you got some humans, you got bovine.
Yeah.
Well, actually, in the for the constellations and in the signs of the zodiac, one of the eagle is really a snake. And that's the same, and I know Doug Hamp and Judd, you probably know this as well. But the ensigns of the tribes, that the tribe of Dan's ensign was a serpent, and they didn't want a serpent, so they sort of changed it to an eagle or a phoenix or something like that.
Well, you know what's really interesting? I'm just trying to pull up another picture here just to share. So what I'm pulling up here is called the mushhushu, and the mushhushu is, as you can see here, it's the same thing it's the same basic creature that I've been showing you guys. Okay, so you can see the eagle talons at the bottom, right? You got of course the wings, right? But this is a little bit more lion-esque than horse. Okay, and this is also known as the Anzu bird. All right, so the Anzu bird and the mushhushu, these are known as the dragon. So in ancient Sumerian, this is called the Ushungalu or Ushungal, which means the great dragon. Okay, and it's like, oh, okay, and again, there's just a repeat of this motif all over the ancient Near East. And when we get to the land of Bashan, right? Habashan means it's from Bashmu, the snake dragon or dragon snake, right? So when we look at these particular creatures, it's called a dragon, but really what it is it's a hybridized creature, right? I mean, you got a lion, you got a horse, you got a scorpion, you got eagles features, right? That's a hybrid, right? That's a chimera, right? The exact same thing.
You also have this, and I know your research, Doug, has been more in Sumerian and Mesopotamian and the ancient biblical world, but you have similar types of creatures in the Americas with the ancient, Native
the Quetzalcoatl, right? The plumed serpent.
Yes.
Right?
I think it was called America. And that's actually where we got our name from. I've studied that. It's been a while since I did it. And then you've got a similar type of creature as to what you just put up in China. So this is not just, I mean, just like Israel got scattered to the four corners of the earth, this false faith, this religion of Babylon, this, what you're looking at on the screen right now, this also got scattered everywhere. You see the Egyptian pyramids, you see the pyramids for the Mayans and the Incas and in the Americas. So there's been the truth and the counterfeit to the truth going all the way back to Babylon. That's why I like to say all roads just make a pit stop in Rome. So
that's very
just
true.
1 second. This is the Bashmu, which is in Hebrew it's Bashan. Okay, and I don't think I have it available, but there's a geoglyph just up a couple stones throw. You can throw a good arm from Gilgal Rephaim. you will find a geoglyph, a giant, right, etching in the ground, kind of like the Nazca Lion, just the same idea. You'll find them.
Yeah, the serpent mound.
Yeah, but in Israel, right? And so the whole area was called the land of the dragon snakes, or the snake dragons, right? And you know, Og of Bashan, right? This was his stomping ground. And you know, especially if you look at letter C, that really appears very, very close to what we find in the ground there in Israel. So I'm agreeing with you that what we find there in the form of the cherub or the seraphim, right, that they have the 4 different faces, but when we actually see those in the world, it has this form of a hybridized creature. It's called a dragon.
Agreed. Yeah. Doug, I don't know if you knew this, but Doug Van Doren and I are writing a paper right now on the serpent mound of Bashan. And you no doubt have run across this too, but this being the English transliteration, but Bashan, BTN, is the same as the Hebrew LTM, which is Leviathan. And there again, you've got another. In this case, you've got the Chaos Dragon. So it's that same sort of serpentine dragon imagery associated with that entire region.
Yeah, see, that's really interesting. I just pulled it up here, so I think
there it
everyone can
is.
see that. Yeah. So right here is the head, right? So you can see the 2 eyes. Hello, it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Right. So you can see the 2 eyes, and then you got the whole body right here, right? And this is just, you know, like I said, a couple stones throw away from Gilgal Rephaim. So this is the Nephilim or Rephaim circle, as it were. And then you got this huge geoglyph. I mean, what's up with that, right? Where did this thing come from? And it looks so similar to the Bashmu or the Bashan, right? So it's not just coincidence. But I hadn't thought of Leviathan, right, as Bashan. That's interesting.
Yeah, I
think about that one. That's very interesting. Wow. Man, I don't know what to do with that. That's pretty.
If audience participation means anything, Doug Woodward, you are winning. The demons are not the same as fallen angels.
Well, I don't go into the language the way that Ham is because I'm not trained that way. But I just, you know, it's from my reading, and I know Doug. Doug Ham is her position because I've read her books, and then I have read lots of other books. You know, my feedback.
He's really smart.
Well, I read a lot of books. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to write the books I write. But I know you are. I'll try to be good natured. That's not easy. I have a sin nature, so it's hard. But you know, I'm not familiar with too many people that take that same point of view. Let's put it that way. So anyway, so that's why it's not my research as much as it's. You know, I got 8 guys over here saying one thing, and you're over there on the other side saying what you're saying. And so I was kind of like, well, that's just, you know, just in the sort of the family of teachers that we're sort of in, although you may be in a different one I'm in. That's not the common view. Let's put it that way.
I know that. Mine is a minority view, but that's okay.
That's okay. Yeah. Well, you have the language, you know, skill that I don't have, and that probably a lot of the other people I read don't have either.
Sometimes things they just keep getting, they quote the same thing, and
we got a little scholastic battle going.
It's okay. We'll
Dr. Judd, what's your opinion on demons and fallen angels?
We don't have to resolve this. I'm okay with it. I don't mind. We can have some tension.
You know what? It's like you know, when you're in a war or you're in a battle or something, you're not concerned with the ranks of your enemy, whether you're shooting at a private or general. You just know that they're shooting back at you. So it's kind of like that, you know. We can split hairs all we want to, but at the end of the day, we're all looking through a glass darkly at this stuff. what we can all agree on is that these are fallen entities that we're dealing with.
That's so
They're
true.
not, they're not nice things.
Yeah,
The moment they
exactly.
got here, they were bad.
They're bad.
That is a
A
true
question
statement.
from Matt24. Do you think there's leftover Nephilim genes that are still influencing the hybrid theories and the satanic seed theories and the Black Awakening, etc.?
Personally, I don't see how there could be Nephilim genetics because of the flood, but certainly post-flood, you know, if these giant tribes are the result of second or multiple incursions of you know, fallen angels, then some of those bloodlines could be remnant, because they did intermarry with human populations. We know that. But see, tracking down the details of that, actually tracking down the genetics, much less the genealogy, is nigh impossible.
Right. Right.
And I'm assuming you're familiar, Dr. Burton, with Dr. Hamp. I'm gonna call y'all both doctors now. With your with his theory or understanding that Nimrod became a Nephilim, like through genetics, if you will, through the entities teaching him their dark arts of how to become a demigod. And back to Greek mythology, the demigods, if you will, are the you know, that had all these human emotions with these supernatural powers, sort of like, I don't know, modern day X-Men or modern day Marvel comics, et cetera, et cetera. So, you got a similar understanding on that, Dr. Burton?
Yeah, I mean, if those genetics are still around, whether they're still around by virtue of interbreeding, or somehow we've reaccessed that, what I and others call watcher tech, are able to do that now. Again, that's hard to quantify for me, because it's not as if you can. I mean, if those bloodlines are around, then the remnants of those bloodlines look completely human. And that may be the case, but I'm always very cautious about tracing some of these bloodlines all the way back to antiquity, because we just don't have, in virtually all cases, we just don't have very accurate records to be able to do that. But that is not me saying that they don't exist. Certainly, the cultural residue of the sort of social and cultural engineering that the Watchers and the Giants were responsible for in human culture. Certainly, we live with that to this day. I've been writing about that really for the last couple of years in particular.
Well, and I had I won't say names, but I had an adult person, very intelligent person, that she went down the Q train road, and now she is, by golly, 100%. They're reptiles, they're reptilians. And she went off on the Icky, or the Ike. I call it the Ike.
Icky's a good way to pronounce his name, I think.
But I mean, she is like, she bought it hook, line, and sinker, and now I like it when she's around. Again, I won't say names because I'm not the weirdest person around at that point. I'm not.
There you go.
Close second, though. Just joking. Oh, man. Well, we're out of time, I'm sorry to say. This has really been fun. I want to have you back. I did put in the chat where people can get your stuff. But is anthrojudd.tripod.com, is that the best website, or is there another website?
That's the temporary one right now for Burton Beyond. I've got a guy that's revamping the websites. I actually have an intern now, thankfully.
Nice.
And you can still go to tioba.org to look at the Institute of Biblical Anthropology stuff. But those websites are almost ready to launch. In fact, I just talked to my guy today. They're almost ready to launch.
Nice. And tell us, where can people get your books?
They can get them at lulu.com. I've got a bookstore there. I'm in the process of transferring my stuff over to Amazon, so it won't be too much longer where they can get it there. People can email me at professorburton@yahoo.com if they're interested in taking coursework, and I'm on social media, so you can find me there too.
Nice, nice. Well, it's really been a pleasure having you. This is so much fun. I mean, you know, there's just more and more to talk about because we're seeing some weird stuff in our days, and
we didn't even get into the elongated skulls. That's one of my favorite things.
Yeah. Well, we can always revisit this topic. So that's the fun part.
Okay, guys, I'm out as well. Thanks for joining. See you tomorrow. God bless.